Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We're back after 2 weeks off. Feels like a lifetime. I literally forgot how to do most of this. But we're back and we'll be starting momentarily. Lots to talk about. Oh, I should put my computer on mute. There we go.
Yeah, I can now send a thread from my desktop. I don't know what you were supposed to say.
Yeah, they're called threads, I think. I've still not even properly started using threads. I'm so bad.
Yeah, I'm just not being social anymore. I just don't feel like talking to people.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know my Instagram password. Oh, apparently I do. Never mind. That's cool. They've got a website now. They just need hashtags. Hashtags are the big one they're missing, and like trending topics and stuff.
Yeah, search either launched already or it's just about to launch now. Not that I ever really use search.
I also don't like it because it's kind of it's hooked to Instagram, and my Instagram's for like real life people I know and not tech. So it's like
Yeah.
it's a weird blend of suddenly I'm tweeting or threading about technology to my nan or whatever. It's just like, oh, what a nerd. Okay, I'm ready to start when you are.
Okay. Let me bring up the voice recorder. I didn't do that. Oh, I just gotta close a couple things. Let me put this on to broadcast. I am now recording.
I am now recording.
3, 2, 1, clap. Hey everyone, welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 323 for September 1st, 2023. Hey everyone, Dan Rubino here, joined Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. We are back after 2 weeks, although not a lot happened in that last 2 weeks, so not a big deal, but there were some things, so we'll catch up on those today. I'm also back from Malaysia, which we'll talk about later as well. But let's go through the rundown. We have, of course, Windows 11 news, so a lot of stuff has happened there with the latest insider build, so Zach will recap that. Microsoft announced its September event, which is combo Surface, Windows, and AI, we assume. They didn't really give me any details, but it's probably a safe bet. So we'll go over that and what we're expecting. There was a new patent from Microsoft that came out that looks very applicable to what a next-gen Surface Duo could be. And it's a follow-up to a patent we saw also last year. So we'll kind of put that into context and whether or not we should expect a reverse foldable display. Microsoft Launcher finally got an update. We'll talk about that. And, little progress is progress. Zach picked up the Pixel Fold, even though he said he wasn't going to pick up a Pixel Fold, but he's a liar. So we'll talk about what changed his mind and his impressions of that device. We'll briefly go through why I was in Malaysia. I can't talk about everything, but I can talk about going through Intel's labs to see how the processor is how they're made basically. And I'll probably screw up a lot of the language because I'm not that much of a processor nerd, but I'll explain what I saw. And then finally today, Lenovo had its big announcements for IFA, or IFA as we like to call it, which is live in Berlin at this moment. And there were quite a few things there that were announced that were actually really exciting, including the Lenovo Go, which is its first handheld gaming system that's going to compete with Steam Deck and the ROG Ally. Zach actually got to see it in person, and we'll talk about the similarities and differences with this device, as well as other Lenovo announcements that piqued our interest. So we'll go through all that hopefully in 90 minutes. Zach, how are you doing on this fine Friday? Zach?
I'm on mute. Of course I am. I'm back now. I was on mute. Sorry.
Wow.
See, we're rusty. I'm rusty. I've forgotten how to do podcasting. No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm just. I was just saying. I'm a bit tired from yesterday's long trip to Berlin and back. Turns out it's not easy to fly into the EU anymore as a UK resident. It's a bit of a process. They really don't want you there. Obviously, I'm being overly dubious there. Of course, they want you there, but getting through security is a lot more difficult now as a UK member because I am no longer part of the European Union, so I can't just show up. But like, hey, friends, and can't do that anymore. I have to explain why I'm there, and there's a big long queue to do it. So I'm quite tired from that. Plus, my flight home was delayed by a few hours. It was just annoying. But we'll get to all the stuff I tried while I was out there later in the show. Dan, how are you?
I'm fine. Yeah, a few days back from Malaysia, still recovering, but I'm sleeping a lot, mostly because the weather now is really nice here. So, but kind of catching up on things. And yeah, it's been a pretty solid week. A lot of good news coming out. So I guess we'll just jump into it with the Windows 11 stuff. So what happened with these insider builds, and what are some new features that we should expect to see in the future Windows updates, possibly?
Yeah, so it wasn't too exciting these last 2 weeks in regards to the builds themselves, and that's not a surprise, as we've discussed previously. We're kind of at the end of this next development phase for the next version of Windows 11, which is 23H2. That is expected to start shipping end of September, middle of October. And so what we're seeing now is basically the final sort of cleanup phase of that release. So everything happening in the dev and the base channels is just them sort of shaping the update in regards to the base channel and polishing off things for release next month. There's a few straggling features in the dev channel that aren't yet in beta, which to my knowledge, if they don't get put in there basically by the end of next week, they're probably going to be delivered in a future moment update, maybe shortly after the 23H2 launch, maybe sometime in November, or it could be saved for early next year. I've had a few people ask me, hey, are we getting more moments updates after 23H2, or is that it until Windows V next? To my knowledge, we will have at least one more moment update, maybe two. There's no reason to stop them. They seamlessly deliver new features, and to my knowledge, Microsoft is planning to do at least one more for those extra features that may not make the cut for the 23H2 day one launch, which is fine and is exactly what happened with 22H2 last year. That launched in September or October, and then we had another moment update in November, which brought with it tabs in File Explorer. So yeah, I expect the same to happen here with 23H2. There are some interesting changes happening to some of the apps, however, as we've discussed previously. Inbox apps are updated independently, although sometimes they will bundle them with a new release, or at least roll them out to the public alongside the launch of a new update. And I think we can see the same here with Snipping Tool and Notepad, which as of this week have been updated with, in regards to Notepad, the ability for Notepad to remember unsaved content, which is sort of not life-saving, but it's a really good feature to have if you're somebody who works in Notepad a lot, and so you lose power, you're working on a desktop and power goes out, you've lost all of that work in Notepad because you didn't save the TXT file. Now Notepad is smart enough to actually have like a temporary memory and can set and just remember stuff. So if you close the app accidentally, or if you lose power, Notepad, when you load it back up, be like, hey, you were previously working on this, would you like to continue doing that? And you can go along from there. So that's really nice if you're a hardcore Notepad user. Still no love for WordPad. Now that I mention it, WordPad hasn't been touched since Windows 7. Or Windows 8 at least, and continues to be the case. Snipping Tool has been updated as well. It's now getting a sort of modified interface along the top. Right now, I've always found this quite confusing. Right now, if you hit Win-Shift-S, you only have the screenshot options. Obviously, Snipping Tool also supports video now, but you can't initiate that mode through the shortcut. You have to open Snipping Tool and then select video first, and then select new to actually begin recording. They're finally changing that. Now when you hit Win-Shift-S, you'll get an interface with the option to toggle between screenshot and video, and a drop down to choose the shape of that. So you can have the rectangle, then you select the area. You can have it to pick an individual window. You can select full screen, or you have the freeform option as well. So that's pretty awesome. I do wish that they would add the ability to just have a shortcut for taking a full screenshot. I know that's Win plus print screen, But my keyboard doesn't have a print screen button. I don't know why, and I'm wondering if this is a trend that's starting to happen.
What keyboard are you using?
This is just the default keyboard that came with the HP Envy, and it just doesn't have a print screen keyboard key.
But that's not a full size keyboard, right?
It's whatever this is. I don't know if you can see it. I think that's pretty full size. It's got a number pad on it. So,
okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
It's weird, but yeah, they have a screen lock key. I don't think I've seen the screen lock key.
Yeah, who uses screen lock?
Yeah, that's wild, but they've got one.
That's the button you just accidentally hit, and you have to figure out later why something
why
is
has this
screwed up on
happened?
the
Yeah,
computer.
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know what's going on, but yeah, the updates to the snipping tool, which are nice to see. But I think that really leads us nicely into it should be our next topic. I don't think it is in the list here, but I will make it one. Oh no, it's not. Never mind. Don't worry. The other thing I wanted to discuss is a story I wrote a couple of weeks back, which we would have talked about had we done the show, but we didn't. So we're talking about it now. AI stuff in apps. So it's unsurprising to hear that Microsoft is working on bringing AI stuff to Windows. We've kind of already seen it a little bit with Windows Copilot and the NPU stuff with Windows Studio Effects. That's very much the beginning of this AI push in Windows. We're going to see a lot more this year and into next year with Windows vNext especially. But for now, we're actually going to start seeing it in small but useful ways in inbox apps on Windows 11. One of those I've heard is AI in Paint. Now, none of this is officially announced yet. I assume we might see some of it at the special event happening on September 21st, which we'll talk about a bit in a second. But Paint in AI is something I've heard that the company's been toying with internally. And this would probably use the same tech that Bing Image Creator uses, where you can type in a prompt and generate an image based on your criteria. That is something they're looking at bringing to Paint as an app. So you'd have a little sort of magic Paint button you click on. You can type in your query, give you a bunch of different options, and you can have that be drawn in Paint over your existing image or as a new image itself, and then you can edit it further using the built-in Paint app tools that you've already got. That's one thing they're planning, or at least working on, or considering for Windows at some point. They're also working on bringing AI to some sort of system utilities as well. So Snipping Tool is a good example here, where they're looking at bringing OCR technology, which stands for optical something recognition. Oh, I can't remember the top of my head.
Optical character recognition.
That's it. That's what it is. So what it means is you could be able to take a screenshot, for example, and the app would be able to use AI. Some people debate whether OCR is AI or not. So that's up to you to decide, but I'll say
it's machine learning. Machine learning is a subset of AI. It's a technicality, but sure. Yeah, technically I would say it's machine learning.
Okay, yeah, okay, so it's machine learning, but what it would do is you can take a screenshot, and the snipping tool will be smart enough to recognize text in that image and allow you to copy it straight to your clipboard, or you'll see it come up in the snipping tool app as text you can select and then copy yourself. That feature's sort of being worked on as we speak, and to my knowledge, that will be shipping on top of Windows 11. They're also working to do a similar thing in the Photos app, where it can identify objects. Is that OCR as well, or is that something different? Because objects aren't the same as text, right? So that might be more magical AI than machine learning.
Yeah, that's probably a little bit more. I mean, it's both, right? So a lot of times you use machine learning to inform AI. AI then brings in more of a human kind of element to it, where it's supposed to give you more context.
Sure. So that's another thing they're working on. I'm told in the Photos app you'll be able to sort of, because you can do this on phones already. This isn't a new thing. Windows currently you can't do it, which is wild. At least not in box. You might be able to download an app to do it, but they are working on it for the Photos app, where you can sort of hold on to it, to an object in an image, and Windows will be smart enough to cut that image out and allow you to paste it elsewhere using AI or whatever you want to call it. And the camera app, the same thing as the OCR stuff. You'll be able to use the camera's live feed to be able to copy text from an image, so that's cool. And these are just the small things I'm hearing in regards to AI that Microsoft is working on for potentially this year or early next year. This is before vNext stuff, to my knowledge. So this will ship before Windows Hudson Valley in late 2024. Obviously, that's the product we're really waiting for in regards to AI stuff. That's where we can expect more AI experiences to be integrated deeper into the OS. Right now, we're very much seeing surface level sort of things that sit on top of Windows that are AI. But I think with Hudson Valley and other projects Microsoft are working on with Core PC, the AI stuff will be much more deeply integrated into the platform, and so that can enable all sorts of unique and special experiences that we're yet to see. But that's basically all the stuff in regards to Windows for now. Of course, we are waiting for the special event, which we'll talk about in a minute, where they will probably formally announce the 2023 update and say when it's coming. It'll probably, to my knowledge, I think it's going to ship to everybody in October. You might be able to do it via like a D week or B or C week preview updates in late September. But yeah, I think it will begin officially rolling out sometime in October. So that's that. Dan, are you excited for any of this AI stuff in Windows?
Oh, sure. I mean, I previously mentioned before, getting a phone call, that AI, a lot of people like to think of as the large language model stuff, Bing Chat, and that's part of it, right? That's just the part that's sort of caught on along with, image creation and deep fakes and all that kind of stuff. But really what we're going to see, and it's going to be a little bit more interesting, are these small bits of AI and machine learning that creep into the computer system that basically just help with everyday tasks to make things better and smarter. Whether it's like right now, you already see it, right? When you get like a text message on your Android phone and has like an appointment reminder and has like a time and a date in there, the system already figures out like that's probably would be a good candidate for a calendar appointment. And then you can click it and then add it to your calendar, like stuff like that. It's small, but you need smarter systems that have machine learning and they can kind of read in and find these things. And it's going to make our lives simpler. Someone's asking comments, will the Paint AI need an NPU? So technically, you never need an NPU. An NPU is not necessary. An NPU is preferred. And what I mean by that is you can brute force any AI using your CPU and or GPU. That's what a lot of us are doing today. It's fine. The problem is it's not efficient. There are two downsides to using that method. One, if you're on a laptop, you're going to hammer your battery life. Two, if you're doing something else, like rendering a video or doing something, you're using, if you're on 12th to 13th gen, your P cores probably for AI stuff. So it means you have less system resources dedicated to the other stuff you want to do. And how this, surfaces in real world is currently, if you have a 12th or 13th gen Intel chip, you may have on your laptop the new Microsoft Studio effects, which can auto blur your background. And some of them have gaze correction where it adjusts your eyes. If you use that, though, you may notice your system start to stutter. And I've seen this even on some HP devices, mostly on the 12th gen. It's a little bit better on 13th. But you'll have the effect there, but your camera quality the frame rate drops because the system is struggling to kind of keep up with it. That's the effect of using a CPU and GPU for AI tasks. If you threw an NPU in there, it's designed to handle those kind of tasks. So it'll free up your P&E cores to do other stuff your computer should be doing. Plus, you won't be hammering your battery life as much since they're a lot more efficient. So that's a difference here with this. You never need an NPU.
I will say that to answer the question specifically, will Paint AI need an NPU? To my knowledge, no, because Bing Creator Image doesn't. That's all cloud-based stuff, so it offloads the process to the cloud, so you can use it on anything from a phone to a workstation. It doesn't matter. It's not affecting your CPU because the actual heavy lifting is being done on a server somewhere. That said, to my knowledge, Microsoft is working on stuff that will require an NPU or equivalent. Remember, NPUs aren't the only dedicated chips that are being designed to handle AI. NPUs are just the ones that have been used on Windows on ARM so far, but Intel has its own equivalent. They have VPUs, and I'm sure AMD has something which I don't know about, which is also their equivalent of handling this AI
I should
stuff.
clarify, Intel, they're just going to call them NPUs. They're going to adopt the NPU language.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I've seen that refer to it as VPUs. I don't know why. But
some of their research has referred to it as that, but as far as I know, next gen chips they'll be called just an NPU.
Okay.
And the reason we haven't, so you're right, a lot of that stuff, a lot of the current AI stuff that people talk about is cloud based, and the reason for that is there hasn't been a huge effort for localized AI content generation, but that's mostly due to the infancy of the genre, as well as the lack of dedicated hardware. So as we move into having discrete NPUs on PCs, you're going to see a shift, and I can tell you that you will probably see large language models also shift to localized processing, or possibly even a hybrid scenario where it uses both. But right now, we only have very few things that do localize AI, which is mostly what I was referring to, the Surface Studio effects, microphone effects that filter out background noise and stuff. But we haven't really seen the floodgates open yet mostly because as this new NPU hardware comes out, you're going to see developers have access to those as standard APIs and everything. And then they can create apps that then leverage that hardware, just like GPUs. Just like before there were time GPUs, you didn't have video games with intense graphics.
Right, yeah.
And then you got a GPU, and developers are like, well, let's use that GPU power. Or before there were dedicated sound cards, right? And you couldn't do 3D quote unquote sound effects.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the beauty of the NPU stuff as it rolls out next year, that you're going to start to see developers create new scenarios for localized AI functionality.
Yeah, a great example for that, for me at least, is Photoshop. Photoshop Beta right now has a new
Right.
AI generative tool in it. And I'm using it on a device that doesn't have any sort of dedicated AI processor. So I'm using it on a 12th gen desktop PC with a RTX 3060 in it. And when I use the generative stuff, especially depending on how big the image is, if you open Task Manager, it's basically using everything. I have 32 gigs of RAM, and I have, as I mentioned, the GPU and CPU. Everything's running at close to 100% utilization when you're using the AI tool. If I was using, or if there was an API for Adobe to tap into the AI co-processor that these new PCs will have, a lot of that work would be offloaded to that, so you wouldn't see it taking up most of your PC's resources. And that's a great thing I think we're going to see with Windows V next in regards to developers being able to tap into these co-processors for AI stuff. And Windows itself will be doing it as well, because right now Microsoft has to be careful in regards to what it adds to Windows and with AI, because it doesn't want to bog the system down with an AI running in the background doing all sorts of things behind the scenes. And that's why, to my knowledge, I think an NPU will at the very least be required for Windows V next. Not to upgrade. If you're running an existing PC, of course you'll still be able to upgrade and you'll just miss out on that AI stuff. But new PCs, if you're an OEM, I'm pretty sure that Microsoft is going to ask them, hey, if you're shipping a PC with Windows 12, it needs to have some kind of NPU, at least in regards to a certain threshold of like premiumness. It can't, if it's like a low end, Intel Celeron thing, then whatever. But a high end device, I'm pretty sure Intel was going to be like, hey, we've got these co-processors here. Windows 12 is better with it. You might as well have it. And so
because again, if like you have a laptop and Windows 12 has all these AI features and you don't have the NPU, you may end up having really bad battery life / poor performance. And that's something that OEMs don't want to deal with. I guess they can make a screen that pops up and be like, listen, your experience may suck because you're using AI and your computer doesn't have an AI chip. But that's, again, that gets into that weird stuff about trying to explain to consumers how all this works. And ideally, you kind of don't want to do that. So it's better just to like hide that functionality from people and don't give them access to it until they get a new computer.
I mean, that's what Apple did, right, with the iPhone. Up until a certain point, iPhones didn't do AI stuff, and now they do. Apple doesn't call it AI, but that object recognition, for example, as we just talked about, the newer iPhones can do that, and that's because Apple has a dedicated chip to handle AI stuff, right? I don't remember what it's called, but they don't advertise it as an individual thing or a special thing. It's just part of the new iPhone. And so I think that's what we're going to see with...
And that's what's funny about it. With the PC stuff, we're going to get the blowback because the upgrade cycles for PCs and laptops is 3 to 5 years, whereas a phone, a lot of people are comfortable with yearly updates. So that's shifting now to 2 and 3 years again, as the differences are less and less. But so people don't mind necessarily when like the new iPhone has a feature that their current iPhone can't do. They're like, well, that's just the way it is. I got to buy a new iPhone. But when it comes to PCs, people all of a sudden get all like fronting and like, oh, that's so unfair. How dare they do that? And it's just like, well, in order to progress this stuff further, you need to sometimes have these hardware cutoffs if you want to make Windows something different than it's been for the last 10 years, right? I mean, that's just what it is. You can't have your cake and eat it too, basically.
Right. So yeah, I think that's
basically... But like all things, I should point out, like all things, I'm sure you can hack around this, right? So say if you do have a computer and Windows 12 has an AI feature that requires, quote unquote, an NPU, 99% sure there'll be a registry change you can do and a few other things.
There's probably
where
like
you can make it use your GPU. Like, we can even do that today with NVIDIA, right?
Yeah.
So NVIDIA has a lot of its AI stuff that uses RTX graphics. But people know you can kind of hack around it and make it use older GPUs that don't support that and still make it work.
I was
So,
going to say there probably will be a registry tweak for it because, and people don't really think about this, but it happens a lot at software companies where software developers will be building this thing for next gen, for like this next gen era or next gen hardware, but they don't have the hardware, so they're developing it on current gen, which is kind of how Windows 10X was built, right? Windows 10X was built for the Surface Neo. Most of the developers building that didn't have access to Windows 10X, so they worked in virtual machines on older PCs, Intel 7th gen, Intel 8th gen, for that. And that's why they have these toggles in like the registry and whatnot, so that these developers can actually work on this code without having the hardware. That's why Windows 11 to this day still has bypasses for the system requirements, because a lot of Windows 11 developers were not using Intel 8th gen and up. They were all on, a lot of them were on it, to my knowledge, on Intel 7th gen chips, because they had lots of workstations based on that gen. So that sort of stuff is always going to be the case. And yeah, you'll probably be able to try it out anyway on existing hardware, and it'll probably be terrible.
There's another real world example of this AI stuff that you can actually believe you can do it today. It's with Audacity. There's a plugin, and I forgot its name, of course, but what it does is you can drop in an MP3 of some song, with instruments and say a vocalist singing, and using AI, it can separate out the vocals from the instruments, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And then you can go back and edit that, like with this plugin, you can be like, change the music from like modern hip hop to reggae.
That's wild. Yeah.
And it'll go and change the music, and then you can drop back in the vocals and like create a new song style. So that is an example of like, you can do that today, and you'll probably end up using the CPU and or GPU to do that. But with an NPU, it just becomes much more efficient. But that's an example of localized processing using AI functionality. Not everybody needs that kind of thing, but I think when it comes to media editing, audio, photo, and video, we're already, you just mentioned, Photoshop and stuff, like you're already starting to see a lot of that. For video editing, this is going to be a really big deal, because I know they're already doing things where like it fills in frame gaps. If it stutters or there's something wrong, it can actually just interpolate where those frames would have been based on the previous and future frames, which is kind of interesting. And you can also just do different types of edits. So that's that's going to really help with that kind of technology. Now, if you don't do any of that stuff, it might not help, but you may see it for things like building PowerPoint. Building PowerPoint slides is in of itself an art form, and using AI, possibly localized, it could help, streamline that process when you feed it in, say, local documents to it. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be, I think, an exciting, next couple of years with this stuff.
Well, on the subject of AI and hardware and stuff, Microsoft has announced an event. They announced it last week, I think, but again, we went into a show last week, so we couldn't talk about it then. So we're talking about it now. Microsoft is calling it a special event. They were very vague in regards to what's actually going to be talked about. But to our knowledge, we know that the event will be focused on new Surface PCs, as well as new AI experiences coming to Windows and Microsoft 365. So that's basically going to be the whole focus. It's going to be, hey, here's some new hardware we're working on. Here's how this hardware incorporates AI on Windows. And obviously that AI on Windows will be coming to other devices with the necessary hardware. And that's going to be the event. And it's going to be kind of cool, I think. Sadly, I'm not going to be around to cover it because I'm on vacation, believe it or not. But Dan and everybody else will be at Windows Central will be covering it. I think Dan's going to be on the ground, so that's going to be super fun as well. According to Paul Thurrott, the event won't be live streamed, so people will have to rely entirely on blogs to
the live blog.
Yeah, the live blog.
So annoying.
So,
but
real quick before we go into the discussion on it, so people have asked me, is this going to be where they announce Windows 12 and stuff? I don't think so. I think we're still quite a bit early for Windows 12, but I think this will be a great time for them to start laying the foundation as to what we've all just talked about with regards to AI and some of those apps and the new surfaces and how they can incorporate AI experiences through third-party apps. I think that's what we're going to see a lot of at this event. Dan, what are your thoughts so far on what we know about the event?
Yeah, it's a little bit telling that it's not Surface first in terms of the headline here. Yeah. And I think that's partly because, we've been kind of down on Surface, I think, for the last couple of podcasts. It's a combination of, I think they're spread pretty thin, and Panos is definitely spread pretty thin with doing the Windows stuff as
Yeah.
well as the hardware stuff. They may have gone out to too many categories with Surface, and now they're losing a little bit of focus and not really maintaining the edge that I think they had. That doesn't mean that stuff is not good. I still think Surface still makes the best, really good hardware, that the overall experience is great, but we're seeing such advancements in technology when it comes to displays. Like, for instance, mini LED now. Everybody was just getting used to OLED, and now mini LED is starting to flood the market. And mini LED offers some unique differences over OLED and preferences there. You also have really improved optics. You have improved cooling systems. Uh, Mostly around the display technology, of course, processors, right? As soon as a new processor drops, HP, Lenovo, Dell, pretty much always there. Razer too, coming out with new laptops. Meanwhile, Microsoft's like a year later, like, all right, we're going to try that new chip now, and it's just been like a little strange. And that's the other half of this, which is that HP, Lenovo, and Dell have just been kind of killing it in terms of the quality of their hardware. That they raised the bar, which is kind of what Surface was meant to do. That it makes Surface a little bit less interesting, and I think for this fall that's going to be the case here. Now, don't get me wrong, you and I were just talking about this before the podcast. I'm really excited about Surface Laptop Studio 2. It's still, I'll say, Laptop Studio, I think, is still one of their best releases ever, even though it doesn't. I don't know the numbers for sales and how it's done. My hunch and my feeling is it's not been like gangbusters at all. And I don't know if that's due to pricing or just because the PC market also crashed around that time as well. But I think it's just a phenomenal laptop. In fact, when I was out in Malaysia, uh, there was the editor at PC Mag was using the laptop studio, and I was kind of jealous.
Nice.
I was like, yeah, I kind of wish I brought mine, you know? So, like, the laptop studio 2, though, is going to be like a really nice upgrade, although it won't be revolutionary, right? You've talked about it already, what we expect, which is, I believe, 13th gen?
Intel 30th
Or was it
gen.
12?
13th gen, 40 series graphics, up to 64 gigabytes of RAM for the first time, and some more USB ports, and I think that's basically the headlines. HDR screen as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and is that the one with the anti-reflective? Are they doing
No,
that, or is that?
that's Surface Pro 10, I think.
Damn it. But that's kind of all we need, because right now, they're on 11th gen. 11th gen's fine. It gets good battery life, but going to those P&E cores really makes a difference in terms of performance. And I've been really happy actually with 13th gen, even over 12th. I've been surprised by that. I thought it wasn't going to be that big of a deal. And in some ways it's not. I would still, compared to 11th gen, I would still take a 12 over it.
Yeah.
But 13th gen's actually been really nice so far. And the 40 series you can't go wrong with. We'll be on the 40 series for a little while anyway. I will say, though, I was just in Malaysia with Intel, and yeah, we talked about next gen chips, which aren't that far off,
Right.
which means, this device will come out. And then, I don't know, in 6 months from you'll start to see this next gen chips come, which I think will be really interesting. I can't talk much about what I saw there, but so they're still a little bit behind, because a lot of companies like Dell, HP, Lenovo, Razer have released their 13th gen stuff in the spring and late spring. We're still seeing some things come out, though. Some things announced today are 13th gen, so they're not that far behind the curve, but they are still behind the curve. So as far as the Go stuff, whatever.
Yeah, they're really.
I know you're more of a Go fan than me. So.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a new Surface Laptop Go and Surface Go, but you're right, they're not groundbreaking redesigns or anything. They're more or less the same as last year, but with better specs. And obviously with this AI focus, I think they're going to talk a bit about how these low-end devices can also do a bit of AI. Like, the one thing I've heard they're going to highlight for the Surface Go is voice clarity, which is a Windows Studio Effects feature. That will be coming to these sort of low-end Go devices as well. And I think the point of that is Microsoft sort of showing everybody that, hey, this AI stuff isn't just for high-end. It also works well on the low-end stuff as well. So that's going to be pretty cool. But yeah, sorry, go on.
I just got to interrupt here on something completely off topic. Okay. It was just a funny comment, because I really just want to set this one up. Someone says, these bugs for Windows, this is Greg Mellon, sorry, in the chat. These bugs for Windows 11 are annoying some users, including Paul Thurrott of Windows Weekly. And again, I think Windows 11 may have been rushed. First of all, wow, something annoyed Paul Thurrott related to Microsoft? Stop the presses. Yeah, I'm pretty sure every release of Windows has annoyed Paul Thurrott. That's his shtick, I would say. That's not to say he doesn't offer insight to those bugs. Of course he does. But I just think it's funny because I feel like everything
Yeah.
annoys
I,
Paul.
I also want to.
So
I also hate hearing this. People say it a lot. Windows 11 had a short development cycle. It was only in testing for 3 months and it shipped. Part of that is true, but people always forget that most of Windows 11's development happened in the internally, and it wasn't just over the course of a year or anything. Microsoft had been working on the platform releases, building up to Windows 11 since 2019. I want to say maybe 2020, whenever the last Windows 10 platform release was. Technically, from that point onwards, all of the platform stuff being worked on was working towards VNet, Windows 11 at the time. So we can consider it 3 years if you want to. I consider it 2 years. But then in regards to the UX stuff, a lot of that stuff was in development for Windows 10X starting in 2018. Like it's not like it just came out of nowhere. Certainly the plan for Windows 11 sort of started coming together in 2020. But that was what have we been working on, and can we bring it all together as one product? It wasn't like let's start working on everything from scratch today. That's not how that worked. So sure, Windows 11 had a short testing phase. I do agree with that. 3 months from public announcement to shipping is very short. But at the same time, it's not like all that stuff had only just been built a few months prior. It had all been in development for many years. So yeah, I just
and
wanted
as
to
people who
clarify that.
cover this stuff for our profession, I don't know. I feel confident stating the stories we've had to report on negative issues with Windows 11 pale compared to Windows 10 and Windows 8.
Yeah.
Like it is just Windows 11 is come across as very stable and
I
not a
love
lot
it.
of issues.
I
And
love
and
it.
I test so many laptops and computers. I'm not getting the same errors as I used to get on Windows 10. I saw way more green and blue screen of deaths on Windows 10 and Windows 10 hardware than I am seeing with Windows 11. Uh, in terms of TPM and requirements for upgrades, you're talking again the 0.1% of people who care about this stuff. This is always a weird thing where people they always Microsoft needs to be more like Apple, and then they are, and they make
Yeah.
hardware, software updates with hardware cutoffs and people still get mad at them. It's like, well, sorry, you can't have it both ways. Apple does that literally all the time. And now Microsoft is doing it a little bit too. It's like, I don't care personally. I mean, it's Microsoft's business, but I don't care if you're on Windows 10 and you want Windows 11, your hardware doesn't support it. It's like, sorry, like no one owes you a Windows 11 upgrade. Like, that's not how the world works.
Yeah.
And I know people are strapped financially, not going out buying a computer is easy. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying like no one's entitled to free upgrades from companies. It's nice. No one, like when you bought a Windows 10 laptop or Windows 8 laptop, no one said this will be okay for Windows 11 because Windows 11 didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't part of the plan. Had they said that and put it in writing, I'd be, yeah, okay, that's messed up that they backtracked, but they don't owe you an update. And
Yeah.
sure, you have to go buy new hardware. But like I just said, the phone model, that's exactly what the phone model has been, and everybody seems cool with that. So I don't know
And
what to say. This is just
yeah,
modern hardware.
and this way of announcing new software updates or OSs these days, it was popularized by Apple. Back in the day, Microsoft would announce a new version of Windows years before it was ready. Like they'd be like, "Hey, we're working on the next version of Windows. Here's a developer preview," and it's like 2 years from shipping. But Apple doesn't do that. They announce the next version of their OS at WWDC in June, and it all ships in September. That's how they've done it for many years, and that's what Microsoft is doing now. They will announce a new version of Windows probably in June or whenever they want to do it, and then a few months go by, you can test it for those few months, and then it ships in whenever it does, September, October. That's just how the industry does it now. And so I don't know why people are surprised at how Windows 11 was sort of unveiled and shipped. But that's just that's how surprises are kept, I guess, although everything always leaks anyway. Maybe they should announce it way ahead of the time if they want to avoid leaks. But no, that's just the way it is now. Anyway, back onto the topic of the Microsoft event itself. So obviously we talked about the hardware. Just for the quick recap, Surface Laptop Studio 2, Surface Go 4, Surface Laptop Go 3 are expected. We're not expecting a Surface Pro 10 or a new Surface Pro. We're not expecting a new Surface Laptop. Those, to my knowledge, are being saved for spring next year. And of course, those will be more AI-focused stuff for then. But this year, it's the big star of the show in regards to hardware will be the Laptop Studio 2, and I'm sure that's what they will use to demo most of the AI stuff. Now, on that AI subject, as we've discussed, things like Paint and Sniff and Chill, I'm sure that may get a mention if we're lucky. They'll probably do a formal announcement of Windows 11 version 23H2 and talk a little bit about all the new innovations there, not just AI, but in general improvements as well. There's a big update to File Explorer, for example, and the Windows Copilot, which I think will probably be a big focus for this event. I know we technically already have access to Windows Copilot, but we don't have access to all of it. The big part we're missing currently is third-party plugins, which I've heard will be a key highlight at this event. Microsoft is essentially doing this event to announce the general availability, or at least a preview availability of third-party plugins in Windows Copilot. And I know it's been working with developers behind the scenes to sort of bring up a few sort of initial third-party plugins to utilize this. I think Adobe's got one. I think I've got a list somewhere. I'll have a look at it later. But there's some third-party developers already jumping on with this. And this is what's supposed to make the Windows Copilot. Right now, we've in our hands-on with the preview, we've all basically said, oh, it's basically just Bing Chat with a tiny bit of Windows integration where you can change your theme color and stuff. It's very, very basic and kind of useless right now. Third-party plugins, whoa, my mic nearly fell. Third-party plugins are supposed to change that. That is where Windows Copilot starts getting interesting. And to my knowledge, that will be the focus at the September event for Windows. And then I think they're also going to talk a little bit about Microsoft 365 Copilot, the AI in Office and Outlook and stuff. That right now has only really been previewed in concept form, or they've not shown live code of that working yet, to my knowledge. I think at this event we will see that, and you'll get hands-on time with that if you're at the event. And to my knowledge, that's actually supposed to ship for consumers next year. I know there's been questions about whether or not that's going to come to consumers. So far, they've only announced it in the sort of business enterprise aspect. But no, I hear it will be a consumer feature next year. And so maybe we'll get a formal announcement of that as well at the event. And then there'll be other little Copilot-y bits here and there. This year is primarily going to be the Copilot focus. I don't think we're going to see a preview of Windows VNext, which is where sort of AI is going to get much more deeply integrated. Like I said, I think this year's very surface level stuff, and that's, pardon the pun, but you get what I mean, like top level AI experiences and any sort of deeper stuff in regards to sort of allowing Windows to work for you. That's probably got to be more next year. But that's what I'm hearing in regards to the event. The big thing will be third-party plugins in Copilot. And so, yeah, I'm sure maybe they'll even announce a developer platform if there isn't already one. I think there must be one, right? Because Bing Chat has third-party plugins already. Sure. So,
yeah, Microsoft has to have plugins and the ability to leverage their technology in other use cases. So I think that's definitely could be. And they've always had sort of like AI, plug-in stuff for developers, but not exactly with Bing Chat.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's a good example of an experience that I would like to see with Windows Copilot is the ability for it to play a song from my Spotify library. Say, hey, can you play this song using Spotify? Right now, you can ask it that and it doesn't know what to do. But with a third-party plugin Spotify could build to integrate with it, when you ask it that, it could look up your account and go, hey, yeah, we can see you've got that song. Launch Windows for Spotify for Windows, sorry. Play that song. That's the kind of thing plugins will be able to do. And it will allow the AI to be a lot more capable of things. Right now, like I said, it's very basic. It can change the system theme. It can turn on Do Not Disturb. That's about it. I'd love to see it be able to analyze like the content on screen, and Microsoft could build a plugin that will say, okay, cool, we'll take a screenshot, we'll use OCR to see what's on screen, and then we can scan that and give you the answer there. That's the sort of thing third-party support allows. So, yeah.
It's interesting that there'll be no new Surface Pro. Not that I think that they're like I don't know what would have been the update outside of we added the 13th gen processor to it. Because there would have been no ARM update.
That's why I think that's why we're not getting one, is because there's no QC processor ready for this fall. And I think Microsoft is committed internally that every new Surface Pro has to have an ARM processor with it to be the thing. So
it would have been a minor upgrade anyway.
Yes.
Unless they added an anti-reflective display. But so it would have been, even had they announced the Surface Pro 10, it would have been not that exciting. But it's unusual in the sense that we've seen for the last couple of years now, 3, 4, maybe 5 years, a new Surface Pro yearly. Like that was just a thing they did in the fall.
We didn't get one in 2016. Remember, that was
Yeah,
oddly a year where we didn't get one. And did we get one in 2018? I think we did. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
I think we did.
But
Yeah.
remember that period was very dry in regards to Surface Pro innovation. From 2016 to 2019, we basically got no real changes to the Surface Pro. There were minor things here and there, but it wasn't like groundbreaking stuff until the Pro X came along in 2019. So I'm not too bothered that we're missing out on that. Plus, the delay does actually mean, I'm hearing at least, the next Surface Pro will have Intel 14th gen. So if you can hold out 6 months, you'll get the newest Intel chip when that gets unveiled, and that would be cool. Same for the Laptop 6. I hear the Laptop 6 will be a much bigger upgrade, finally. Hearing there's a sort of newer design on the way for that, so that should be cool to see as well. But yeah, to my knowledge, they won't be at the event on September 21st. Microsoft could do a preview thing where they're like, here's 2 more devices coming next year, but they were burned hard last time they did that with the Surface Neo. So I don't know if they want to risk that again. But yeah, from every source I've asked, because there's been some contention about this. Some sources were like, early this year, were like, oh yeah, we're getting a Pro 10 and a Laptop 6 this fall. And then it was like, maybe not. I've since been asking loads of sources, and everyone I talk to say it doesn't look like there's anything more than the 3 devices we've talked about shipping this fall. So I'm not holding my breath for the new Surface Pro or laptop this year.
Yeah, so a little bit strange there, but from what I've seen of the some next gen stuff from Intel, it's going to be worth the wait anyway. So very cool stuff. We'll be there. I'll be there in New York on the 21st. I still got to figure out when I'm going to get there. It's at 9. Well, doors open at 9 a.m. How dare they?
You're rolling at
Did
10.
Did Panos not get the memo?
Yeah.
Don't do 9 a.m.
That's wild. That is wild.
For a while they were doing them like at 11 and a little bit later. It was like, I was like, yeah, thank you.
I just don't know
11 a.m.
Why aren't they streaming it? It's shocking that it's not being streamed.
Because it's probably not that exciting. I think because sometimes they do the stream stuff when it's and my doggy wants to go out, of course. Let me wait. I think they'd like to do the stream stuff when it's really like a big deal, like an industry first kind of thing. Whereas they
didn't stream Bing Chat, did they? That event was not streamed.
No.
Well. I think it's because a lot of the AI stuff is just typing into a box.
Yeah, I mean it's true too, right? It's not that exciting to demo, and it's like, unless they're going to unveil like an AI digital assistant.
It's more exciting to hear about it than see it.
Yeah, it's definitely true.
And obviously, as you said, the new hardware isn't that new. It's just basically spec bumps here and there, so it's not like we need to see.
Oh, it totally is.
Yeah.
So. Like it's literally just upgrades,
But this is primarily why I don't think Windows 12 will be unveiled. They won't even. I don't think they're going to tease the next thing because no one's there to. We can't see it. What will happen is they'll do that, and then all the images you see on Twitter will be people taking a picture or using an iPhone of a display because that's what it would be. So they might, they're not going to do Windows 12 teaser here. I don't think.
Knowledge 238 is asking why no AMD Surface products. Does Intel and Surface have some sort of deal together? Do they share R&D?
AMD sucks. No joke.
I was exactly going to say the same thing. It's because AMD sucks. And I know like some people go like clutch their pearls. Listen, AMD is awesome on desktop. I'm not going to say that. But when it comes to laptop, I've not been impressed with what they've offered so far. It's at best almost as good as what Intel's been doing. But so far, AMD's only been able to crack budget laptops and a few gaming laptops, and once in a while they'll do something special like with the Lenovo ThinkPad Z series, which to be fair are really nice laptops. I don't want to say I would never talk anyone out getting them. I think they're fine, they're good. But what I mean is, so to answer the other part, does Intel and Surface have some sort of deal together? Oh, of course they do. Intel, I've said this a lot of times on this podcast, Intel is at a different level than AMD, Apple, and Qualcomm when it comes to its chips and its program. For one, it designs all its chips and it makes all its chips all in the same place. Well, mostly the same place, but it does it all internally. They own their own fabs. They make everything. And that's what I saw this week, and we'll talk about it later. They make everything from the very beginning to the very end. Not only do they do that, they make reference design laptops and PCs and next-gen form factors. We mentioned the dual screen devices and foldable Windows devices, devices that had the e-ink keyboard and stuff that like Lenovo did a few years back. Those are all Intel designs. Like Intel made those internally. And then they turn around to OEMs and they'd be like, hey, if you want, you can go make this computer using our reference design. Of course, Intel, they get payment for it. It's a licensing thing. But what that does for a company like Lenovo or HP is they don't now have to spend money internally for R&D and developing a whole new product form factor. Intel's already done it for them. And it happens with even on like internal parts and like displays and like all this stuff. And that's something AMD, last I talked to them, they're starting to kind of get into that, but it's just something that, so Intel offers this entire package. Not only that, they can guarantee you production because they control their own fabs. When you're AMD, you design your chip. Now you got to turn around and got to go to TSMC and be like, can you make these? And they'll be like, sure, but you're going to be behind Apple because Apple's our number one customer and we're making all of their chips. And maybe you're behind Qualcomm because we do their stuff too. So we'll be able to give you this amount of yield to ship this many products. Meanwhile, Intel's like, well, we own all our own fabs and factories. We can just make as many chips as we need to based on our capabilities. And so because of that, Intel can ship just way more stuff. I was told by someone that, what was it? Like the total amount of AMD employees equals the amount of Intel software engineers. Like just make software apps for Intel. Like Intel is so massive compared to AMD. It's like not really funny. So it just comes to market power, market offerings, and all that kind of stuff. And the fact that AMD chips, even though everybody's like, but efficiency, but like I pointed out numerous times, they get there a lot of times by throttling the power dramatically, both for the CPU, the GPU, and the SSD when on battery power. That's how they get their efficiency a lot of times. And even the AI stuff, they're behind Intel on AI as well. So they're catching up there. But those are the reasons for it. Now, I'm rooting for AMD. I want competition. I want them to do well. And I want Qualcomm there as well because AMD re-entering the market again the last few years is definitely, I would say, driven Intel to be a better company. So we benefit from that.
Yeah.
But those are the reasons for it. AMD's just not been like if Microsoft put AMD chips in their Surface and we're like, these things are amazing. This is such a step above of what we got with Intel. They would go with them 100%.
Yeah.
But they don't. So
Well,
that's
we
why.
did see them briefly experiment with AMD, didn't we, in the Surface laptop?
Yeah.
The laptop 3 and the 4, to my knowledge, had AMD chips, then the laptop 5
Yeah.
didn't. And, when we asked Microsoft about that, they were like, hey, we craft these devices for our customers, and right now we feel that the decisions we've made for this fit our customers the best. And what they were basically saying is the AMD chip sucks. We went with the Intel chip this year. And if AMD improves, then absolutely we'll see that again. We'll see AMD back in Surface. I don't. There's not like there's a rule that it can never happen now. It's just that they're waiting for the chip to get better, so it at the very least matches on the same level. Because remember the laptop 3 especially, I remember the reviews being quite negative on the AMD side and quite positive on the Intel side. Microsoft wants to avoid that. They want them to basically be neck and neck where possible. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, these are businesses. If you're HP or Lenovo or Microsoft, one, you want to make sure the product you're delivering, you do have a nice profit margin on it. And chips play a big part in that. And, how many you can buy in bulk and get a discount rate. So AMD needs to compete with Intel on that front. It also comes down to satisfaction. If, AMD made a really good chip and consumers were really, really happy with the performance over Intel and preferred it, companies would switch to it because that's ultimately they want to sell a good product to you. It's not like a conspiracy. Like, no, they use Intel products, even though they all secretly know AMD is better. Why would they do that? They got to compete with Apple, especially in mind share, if not market share. And they want to release the best product possible. And they're going to do that where they can, So they've been giving AMD a fair shot. Like I said, some of these companies, HP did an NV a couple of years ago, and I gave it a very positive review. So they are giving AMD shots with some devices. It's just, are they selling well and are they dramatically better than Intel ones is a separate question,
Yeah. All right, so that's everything regarding the Microsoft event. As we've mentioned, we'll be on the ground covering it when it happens. Very exciting stuff. We should move on to our next topic, Surface Duo. Could it be Surface Duo? I think that's the question. This week, another patent. I kind of forgot that there was a patent similar to this that came out last year, but another patent detailing a 360-degree folding screen was published from Microsoft. And obviously that gets people questioning, hey, is this something they're working on for the next Surface Duo? And so I wrote a quick piece talking about this, and my conclusion is no. This is not for the next Surface Duo. Now, could it be for a future Surface phone of some kind? Possibly. But as of right now, if Microsoft is to release a Surface Duo 3 next fall, which to be fair is looking unlikely at this point anyway, I think I would be incredibly shocked if it is using a 360-degree folding screen for a number of reasons. The first one primarily being cost. That technology is very experimental, and if Microsoft was even able to get it to a point where it could be manufactured at scale in a factory, that's going to be very costly for them, and so that price will be passed on to the consumer. So if you're okay with buying a phone that costs $2,500, then sure, then that's a product that makes sense. But considering people are upset at $1,400 for the Surface Duo, I don't think Microsoft is able to ship a product at $2,500 as a phone under the Surface brand. I just don't think.
But everybody seemed cool with the Surface Duo's price when it came out. So
yeah. it's not gonna happen. So there's a few things about this. So Microsoft can wait for the technology to become easier to build, and then prices come down in regards to manufacturing, and so it can be cheaper to sell. That will probably be a few years from now. But then there's also the other aspect of durability. There's, people say the current 180-degree folding screens are quite fragile. A 360-degree folding screen is going to be even less durable than that, because you've got to think about it. When it's folded all the way out, it's exposed to the elements, and so if you drop it or if you lay it down on like a flat surface that has a tiny speck of sand or something on it, it's going to scratch or maybe even pierce the screen, which is not good news. Not only that, for a 360-degree folding screen to be functional safely, it's going to need to be quite thick, because you've got to think about how the display is stored when it's closed in that sort of water drop sort of shape, is how most of them are doing it now. But then when it's open, it has to stretch over the hinge so it can actually fold all the way back on itself. That's going to wear quickly right now, at least we're using current materials that are possible for a folding screen. So companies, including Samsung and LG, are sort of figuring out ways to solve that so the screen doesn't wear over time. That'll wear a lot quicker than a device that only opens halfway, for example. So that's another aspect that they got to solve. And then, like I said, the manufacturing thing. Just because they can build it in a lab doesn't mean they can produce it at scale at a factory. Microsoft can say, hey, we can do this 360-degree hinge here by hand, no problem. But then it needs to go to Foxconn and say, hey, we want to build this. We want 100,000 units. Can you do it? And Foxconn can be like, no, we can't. That's really complex. And if you want us to do it, we've got to buy new machinery or hire more people. It's going to cost an arm and a leg for this to happen. So right now, as a product, as a device to sell, it's not viable with that form factor. The future, that could change, but I would be very shocked if Surface Duo 3 is that. I think Surface Duo 3 will be the thing we've discussed already, 180-degree hinge with a cover display, because that answers most people's complaints with the Surface Duo, that being can't use it when it's closed and there's a gap down the middle when you want to watch a video. Like those are the two biggest complaints people had about the Duo. This form factor that the Pixel Fold and other foldables have solved those issues, and so I think that's what Microsoft will go with for now. Like I said, the future's another story, but I would be very shocked if Surface Duo 3 is using this 360-degree display.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is this is a new technology. LG came out with it 2022, but that's just a prototype.
Right.
It still needs to be tested in the field and durability. How many folds does it take before it breaks? It's like, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop? And then it's also about manufacturing. How expensive is it to manufacture? Can these be mass produced? And as you noted, at what cost? Because it'll be super expensive. And right now it doesn't seem like Microsoft has the advantage of being like, well, we're going to charge even more for a foldable phone than our competition because we're at Microsoft. That won't fly at all. If anything, they got to come in from the other end and try to hit that $9.99 price point while also delivering something unique and different. And this is always the issue with displays, which is you'll see new displays come out or be offered, but then it takes a company like Lenovo or Dell or a smartphone company like Apple to put a large order in for them to get mass produced. And then that over time brings down the cost. I've pointed this out numerous times with OLED displays and laptops. OLED was very rare. They were only in very high-end premium stuff. And now we're seeing them in, $1,000 laptops, sometimes even less, because they've been ordered so much. Don't forget, a lot of PC makers are basically using generic screens. That is, they order them from Samsung or LG. And just because that's like Samsung gives you a menu, be like, well, this is what we offer this year for our production. and you can order this in this size and this, and then companies pick and choose the components that they want, and they build their PCs around it. And Microsoft is no different there. And Microsoft historically has also used customized displays, which has always driven up the price. So
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions here. You're right, though. I think, we could probably even see this in a larger Surface device.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. I don't think this technology won't happen and come down. I think companies
no,
will definitely go and experiment with it. So we will see it, just when. And then the bigger question is, will we see a phone Android device from Microsoft ever again? That, I think, remains to be seen.
That's the big question. But yeah, no, regarding that bigger Surface, I fully believe that this 360-degree folding design makes more sense than a tablet, because if you could picture a 13-inch Surface Pro that folds shut like a book, but then folds all the way around like a Surface Mini, you now have a Surface Pro and a Surface Mini in one. That's reinventing the wheel, the 2-in-1 sort of thing, right? About it's a 13-inch tablet that works as a laptop. Oh, it's also now a 9-inch on-the-go mini tablet, which is essentially a replacement for the Surface Mini that never launched. That, I think, is a cool idea, especially if it's running Windows. It's a lot more productive, and it's a lot. There's more reason to buy it, because Surface, I think, is kind of established well enough as a reliable PC maker. The problem with it being a phone is that, obviously, with the Surface Duo and Surface Duo 2, they've really tarnished their phone-making brand. It's like, oh, nobody should buy a Duo 3 because of how they treat Duo 1 and Duo 2. So I think that ship has almost sailed for another experimental phone form factor. At least for now, Microsoft has a lot of work to do to build up its reputation again there. But on the PC side, Surface is known for that. It's known for trying new form factors, and the Surface Book and the Surface Pro originally. I think, that this idea is excellent for a 13-inch device. And plus, it's because it's a tablet, it can be thicker. Obviously, tablets naturally are thicker than phones anyway, so there's a lot more room to play with in regards to building this as an engineer. Mm-hmm. And it's probably easier to put together as well, because there's more room to work with. So, yeah, I think we're going to keep seeing these patterns come from Microsoft, because, as we've discussed before, the Surface team experiments with everything. Just because it's not shipped as a product doesn't mean they've never tried to build it. They've built everything from slab phones to smartwatches to desktops like the Mac Studio. They've done it all internally. But it doesn't mean they will ever ship as hardware. There's a fine line between the experimental stuff the hardware engineering teams come up with, and another thing regarding getting it greenlit to ship as a product, because that involves other teams and whatnot, of course. So, yeah. But yeah, for now, I don't think we're going to see that folding screen in a Surface Duo.
We have 2 questions/comments that we'll get to in a moment. But first, this podcast is sponsored by who, Zach?
It's sponsored by Indeed. What's the game where no one wins? The waiting game. When it comes to hiring, don't wait for great time to find you. Find them first with Indeed. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for the candidates with the right skills, Indeed is a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. They streamline hiring with powerful tools that find you matched candidates, and with Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed, that is. One of the things we think is pretty sweet about Indeed is that candidates you invite to apply are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search. And even better, Indeed's the only job site where you pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements. Indeed is an unbelievably powerful hiring platform, delivering 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest 2019. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. So start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job at Indeed.com/WCP. That offer is good for a limited time only. That's a $75 job credit now at Indeed.com/WCP. Go to Indeed.com/WCP and support the show by saying you heard about it from this podcast. Indeed.com/WCP. Terms and conditions do apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Thank you, Indeed, for sponsoring.
Let's see. Jason Diaz asks, is there any chance of hearing anything about Windows 12 this year from Microsoft? I'm going to go say no.
Yeah, I don't. There's no point.
What they could do is they could talk about, and likely will, future features coming to Windows.
Future AI experiences. Yeah, I think maybe that might be a thing, yeah.
And then it'll just happen to be in version of Windows 12.
Yeah.
That'll be announced later on.
Yeah.
But they're not going to announce anything about like a Windows 12. They'll just talk about future AI
They did
stuff
that with
too.
some Windows 10, Windows 11 stuff as well. If you remember during that period where there was not really much going on with Windows 10, the Insider program was still getting stuff. And although it was all technically destined for Windows 10, a lot of that ended up being Windows 11 exclusive. So we'll probably see some of that here as well. They'll talk about, right today, this is what we're announcing. We can also talk about things we're working on. They may not outright say for the next version of Windows, but they'll be like, yeah, in the future, you'll be able to have an app that can do this. And then it'll end
Or
up
they'll
being...
even get real cheeky and like say future versions of Windows.
Yeah, I just don't think we're going to see it. They won't show us the new UI or anything, but yeah,
Right,
definitely
right.
what Dan's saying I think is possible.
If they say that, then it would be like wink, nod, Windows 12,
Yeah.
or Windows 11.1.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully, we don't go back to that.
Yeah.
And then there's Tyran Kuz, who has the oddest comments of the podcast. You won an award of me calling you out as having the oddest comments, which is between Android and iOS. I'm
Yeah.
sticking with iOS. Fair enough. Then he goes on to say, tried Surface Go 3 as my phone. It worked, but I hated carrying around a backpack for the tablet, so went back to iPhone, iWatch, and M1 Mac.
I can see the
That's
problem.
a fair response to carrying around a small tablet as your phone.
Yeah.
When that tablet is only a Windows PC and not actually a phone. So all I'm going to say is congratulations on coming back to reality. I'm pretty sure we all could have told you that carrying around a Surface Go 3 as your phone, quote unquote, because it's not a phone.
Do you remember when I tried to use my Surface Laptop Studio as a phone for a week, Dan? That was ridiculous.
It was so heavy. It was just very, I couldn't fit in my pocket. It was very strange. I'm surprised I didn't like it. So yeah, okay. Then we'll move on from that. Microsoft Launcher and Bing Chats. Yes, so Microsoft Launcher, despite we've been complaining the last few weeks of it not having updates and upgrades, finally did. And this is one I've been arguing for a long time. I'm just like, slap Bing Chat into the darn thing so you can just use it directly. Because if you don't know, Microsoft Launcher, like Google launchers, when you install it, puts basically the Bing bar, like a search bar at the bottom. And it was there and it was Bing, but it didn't have the Bing Chat. Now it does, and it's a little bit more integrated, which is nice. It's expected and basic, but still nice. It's there. So I unfortunately, I've been using the Fold 5, and I still got to write up a piece on that. Hopefully I'll do that next week. But when this news came out, I was like, all right, let me try Microsoft Launcher on this, and it's just not good. I'm just having issues with it. It has to do with the fact that there are two screens technically. So you set up things on one screen, and then when you open it, like I know when I go to the tablet mode, all of a sudden the icons become very small. And so I have to figure out some things and sit down and, I don't know, see if it's something I can work around. But I've been using the Samsung launcher on the Fold 5 and been pretty happy with it. That said, you can if you download the Bing and or Start app, they're basically the same thing. You can put the search widget there, and if you shrink it down enough, it just turns into the Bing Chat icon, and you can just have that as a one-touch thing. So I'm getting the same functionality. I do like Microsoft's launchers, like design and integration, a little bit more than Samsung's, but Samsung's does work flawlessly with its device, which shouldn't be a surprise. Zach, do you still use Launcher? And especially, I guess this can go into your Pixel Fold discussion, since you now have a Pixel Fold. Are you using a Launcher on that, or are you using Google's Launcher?
I'm using Google's launcher, and it's not because I really hate the Microsoft launcher. I am kind of disheartened by the lack of updates and new features it's been getting, for sure. And the inclusion of Bing Chat is nice, but it's a very basic integration. It's more or less a shortcut to the Bing website, which seems to be the case in most areas where Bing Chat is being integrated. But it's fine. It's good that you can now tap one button from the home screen and launch straight into that interface. If you're a Microsoft Launcher user, you're going to benefit from that if you are also a Bing Chat user. But the integration doesn't go any deeper than that. It's not able to do things like search your contacts or open apps and whatnot. It's just Bing Chat on your phone, access through a single button. So keep that in mind. But the reason I don't use Microsoft Launcher is more Android's fault in regards to the limitations around the API that launcher makers have to abide by. And unfortunately, it just means that most third-party launchers don't really integrate that well with gestures. And this is going to be a really picky thing that only I notice, but the gestures are different between when using your stock launcher and using a third-party launcher. You may not notice it, especially if you're using the home button gestures, but if you're using, not gestures there, but home buttons, but if you're using swipe gestures, The animations are different. A lot of the time, the launcher or whatever, the connection between the app going home and the launcher is not always 100% accurate. That's certainly the case with Microsoft Launcher. Whereas on the native stock launcher on a phone, whether it be a Samsung or a Google or a OnePlus, you get that buttery smooth sort of animation where the app shrinks back into the home icon and stuff. That little detail I really like, and it's the primary reason why I don't use third-party launchers. But yeah, also Microsoft doesn't deserve my usage. They're not updating it, so why should I use it?
Not wrong.
Yeah.
That said, I don't think a lot of the other launchers are necessarily getting massive updates either. But if you're on the Pixel Fold, my Google's launcher is going to be optimized to run on that device, whereas Microsoft's won't, and so there's that issue too. So
yeah. So on the subject of the
but
Pixel
Microsoft
Fold,
could fix that.
They could fix it.
Microsoft could fix that.
But to my knowledge, I don't think any launcher has fixed that issue with the getting bigger on the big screen, because the Microsoft launcher does a terrible job at it, where the activity feed becomes really wide as a result. It's not optimized for the big screen and stuff.
This is, to be fair, well, Microsoft should, just because they're kind of in the foldable business, although that's debatable at this point. But it is a bigger issue, which is, you're right. No other app really has gone out of its way to update for dual screen and or foldable devices. Like some are a little bit, like Telegram looks kind of cool, and WhatsApp and some of the messaging stuff. But not a lot of apps really have been optimized, and definitely not a lot of launchers. So it is kind of a big problem in general. Yeah. But this is a Google problem. So
yep. On the subject of Google, as I mentioned, or as Dan mentioned, I do now have a Pixel Fold. I was on and off about the Pixel Fold when it was announced. I loved the idea of the hardware. Kind of not a big fan of Android's skin on top of Google's skin on top of Android, and that was the reason why I cancelled my pre-order originally. I just didn't want to sign up for a phone where the OS experience I wasn't going to enjoy, but I sort of had a change of heart with that. I'm still not a huge fan of the UX on Android here, but it's not as offensive as I remember it being. I'm just sort of looking past it, especially, they've got the stupid Google Home bar on the bottom, which I just ignore. And I've actually made this little glance notification thing tie into Outlook, so it actually shows my Outlook calendar notification stuff now. So it's a bit more useful than it was before. I still would like to remove it. Maybe Google will let me do that one day, but for now, it's just sitting up in the corner doing its own thing. I'm just ignoring that as well, essentially. But yeah, I'm now a Pixel Fold user. I've moved on from the Duo. This is the replacement for that. The reason why I didn't wait for, say, the Honor Magic V2 or the upcoming OnePlus Fold is because I don't want to wait. I can't bother. I'm going to India this month. I want a good phone that can take relatively good photos. And to my knowledge, none of those foldable phones coming anytime soon in the UK at least. So I just didn't want to wait anymore. Plus, I got a good trade-in deal on this, and it came with a free Pixel Watch and stuff. So overall, I actually really do like it. I think this hardware is the best foldable hardware I've personally held. Obviously, I've had the Duo, I had the Galaxy Fold, and now I've got this. And this for sure is the most premium, best build quality foldable I've felt in regards to the hinge, in regards to everything. Even just how it sounds when it closes. Oh, it's just perfect. Everything about it's so nice. Yeah, and it does. I think it beats the Surface Duo in build quality as well. The metal sort of edges do a lot of heavy lifting there. Like, it's just so much more premium to pick up a device with cold metal edges, whereas the Duo obviously was plastic. On all three except the spine, where the spine was metal. I like the form factor. I like the shape and size of the outer screen. I think this is a really nice single screen phone sort of usage thing. It's almost one-handable everywhere. The wideness of it's great as well. Way better than the Galaxy Fold. I could not stand the Galaxy Fold's outer screen. And then the inside screen is great too. I do like the shape of it. It's just a shame that right now most apps don't technically utilize all of that screen space. On most foldables, the OEM is forcing the app to go full screen. But Google said, no, we're going to let the developer do it. And so that means most apps don't actually abide by that big screen on the inside. But some apps do, like Telegram and WhatsApp and Outlook. All of Microsoft's apps do a really good job at spanning on this screen. They're really, really nice. Spotify, even TikTok. But then there's lots of apps that don't, like Twitter, Threads, Instagram, all that sort of stuff. The web browsers do, like Microsoft Edge does, and you get the tabs along the top. It is cool, but there's a lot that still don't. Most banking apps don't, but you can do like side by side still, so that's really cool. But yeah, overall, I'm very impressed. I'm very happy with it. I'm probably going to stick with this until the second Gen 1 comes out, or Microsoft comes back with a Surface Duo 3.
How's battery life been?
So that's probably one of the weaker points of it. It's okay. It got me.
Yeah.
It can get you through a day with medium use, I think. But if you're a heavy user, yeah, you want to bring a battery pack or something because it will die. The Google Tensor chip in here isn't the most efficient chip on the market. It's the G2, which is based on an old Exynos design, to my knowledge, and it's not very efficient. It gets warm as well. That's the
And
other.
G3 they say is about to come out too, which is the frustrating part.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they could have waited and just launched this with the G3 next month, but they didn't. And I'm not too bothered. I'm really not. All smartphone chips are fast enough these days. I'm really not bothered about it. Besides, I was coming from an aging Duo 2 with a 888 processor, which it didn't have any that good battery life anymore anyway. So it's not like I'm it's worlds apart. But yeah, if you're coming from say like a Galaxy Fold or even like a Huawei or a Xiaomi foldable, you may be a little bit disappointed with the battery life on here, but like I said, it can get you through a day with light to medium usage with little to no issues. The Pixel Watch, on the other hand, garbage. I can't complain about it much because it came through with the phone, but yeah, the battery life on that is awful. It can do almost 24 hours if you're lucky. So it means you've got to charge it every day, and if you're using it for sleep tracking, you definitely have to charge it every day because you won't be able to get through the next day at all. Basically, if you pick it up in the morning, put it on, and you want it to track your sleep, you'll be able to get through the day. Let's say you don't charge it when you take a shower at the end of the day, you keep it on, and you go to bed. When you wake up the next morning, it will be dead. So you need to charge it at some point in the day, whether that's when you're showering or if you have a 5-minute break to do so. Also, it doesn't actually, I say 5 minute, maybe half an hour. It takes a while to charge. And the Pixel Fold for that matter. They're not fast charging devices, not really. And that's a bummer. Like if the watch took 5 minutes to go from 0 to 50%, then that would be great. But it doesn't. It takes a while. It's like an hour maybe for the whole thing to go from 0 to 100. And that's just like, ugh. Take a long shower if you're a Pixel Fold user. So yeah, Pixel Watch. I meant, sorry.
What color did you get?
I got the black one. I thought about getting the white one.
Oh.
The problem is,
so you got the wrong color.
No, I did not. The problem with the white, the white Google Fold is that it's not white. It's like an off-white with gold rims, and I cannot stand gold. I hate the color gold.
I like gold ones done just in a little bit. I think it looks really nice.
It's so like, I don't know. I can't do gold. Can't do it. So no, I didn't get the porcelain, they call it, porcelain white. I got the good color, which is the black one, which goes with everything. It looks good no matter what you wear, who you are.
Everything.
It just looks good. So there you go.
So my only issue with all this is like, well, there's a couple. One, the battery life is, that's what I said about the Fold 5's battery life is incredible. Yeah. I go to bed every night, 50 or 60% battery. And even while I was traveling, I had no issues with it. The other is optional pen support, but also now really convenient pen support. And again, I don't use a pen often, but with the case, although I've been going naked for the last 2 weeks with the phone, but with the case and that pen, it's so great. Just that the few times you do want to use it, I use it like during photo editing. It helps a lot actually, but I like the ability to be able to use the pen, and Samsung's gone a long way to making the pen more useful. Like you can use it to write in any text box and it'll convert to text on the phone, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And of course they have all their S Pen apps and memos and all that kind of stuff, so that makes it useful. And then the other is just the a little bit of concern, of course, with the customer support, which I've heard is poor. Not that I expect when I buy a Google product it's going to break, but it could, especially with the foldable. It's a little bit more risky. And also their trade-ins are just garbage. like I kind of would go down that path. I'm like you, like I played with the phone. I really liked it, and I would consider getting one. But then I just looked at it, right? An S23 Ultra, they'll give me $430 for it. Like, really?
Yeah.
An S23 Ultra, like that's just nothing compared to what that phone is worth. And it's just like they don't make it where Samsung, their trade-ins were so good. They're like Apple's that it made it really hard to resist to do an upgrade, which is the point. But Google's like, we don't really care. If you want to come over, we'll give you some money for your brand new phone, but we're not going to give you a lot because we don't care if you actually buy this thing. And that's the message I get. It's just like, wow, they really like. I'd almost be okay with the 430. They allowed you to trade in multiple devices, but they don't want to do that either, right? So it's just like, yeah, we'll give you maybe like $400 or $500 off an $1,800 phone. It's just like, I can't do that, man. That's it's not worth it. Not for the drawbacks.
Yeah, you mentioned you're going caseless now. I too had a case in mind for the first week or so. I had it. I had this first party Google Pixel case from Google. £65, I think it is. Very expensive for a case, but so are the Duos ones. I remember they're like $40 or something. Do you remember?
Yeah.
This case is trash. This has the same issue the Surface Duo Gen 1 bumpers had. Do you remember the problem with those being that they were basically dust magnets? They were made of this sort of soft silicon rubber, and so when you slide it out of a pocket, it just basically rips all the dust from your pocket onto the bumper. It has the same problem. Absolute trash. I'm like, this is going back. I'm returning this. That is awful. So I'm now just going.
I return it with all the dust.
yeah. I'm going caseless. So it's so nice caseless, and I was quite taken aback by how heavy it is versus the Galaxy Fold, because on paper they don't seem that different. Well, I think the Galaxy Fold's 250 grams, and this is 282 grams, which is the same weight as the Duo 2. And obviously I've been a Duo 2 user, I was thinking, it'd be fine. But because this is smaller than the Duo 2, it's much more dense. And so you really feel it. It's like, wow, this is properly heavy. Now I know why the Duo team went with plastic instead of metal. Because obviously if it went with metal, it would have been even heavier. It probably would have been close to 300 grams. That would have been wild.
And I think to put that in perspective, I think the Fold 5 is down to like 252 grams.
Yeah, it's 252. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which isn't even the lightest. I think the new Honor Magic V2 is like 212 or 230 grams. Like they're getting so light. It's crazy.
Yeah. Which is what's needed. Like I find the Fold 5's weight perfect. I guess if it was lighter it'd be fine, but I did not notice it at all. And I guess that will segue into my travel. So as some of you may recall, Intel invited me and some other, mostly analysts, like high-level analysts, and then some of the really hardcore chip press media who just know processors way better than I do. I was kind of one of the only mainstream, I would say, mid-level sites, and mid-level in terms of like, we go deep into tech, but we're not like a non-tech, one of our sister sites, or even Tom's Hardware, another sister site. They were there. They go deeper than we do on this stuff and have much more knowledgeable people, but I was still able to gather a lot of information. So the future chip stuff I can't talk about. There is an embargo for that, so don't worry. You will hear about it someday. But it's very exciting, I will say. And this is why I'm so bullish on Intel, and I think their long-term plan is going to really work out for them. So we'll hold that discussion for another day, but I can talk about the factory tour that we saw. So when last year, Intel, this is their second tour, they call it Intel Technology Tour, ITT. The first one was Israel last year in Tel Aviv, and I went to that one. And that one, we got to see the fab where they make the wafers, the big, beautiful, shiny discs that you sometimes see in photos whenever they're talking about chips and manufacturing. So I got to see that process. There's a podcast of me talking about that, and that was truly mind-blowing. But that was like, okay, so now they got the wafer. That was the end of that process. Now we saw what happens to those wafers. They get shipped to like a different factory, and they go through this system. So we got to see the system itself, and it's when you see how these chips are made, it's sort of like, I know everybody talks about UFOs today and aliens. Like if you want to see like alien stuff, you go take a tour of Intel's chip factory. The fact that they work on this stuff and the level of precision that they work on is just really, really mind-blowing. So we saw the chips, they come in on the wafers, and then we see them go through this special machine. And I'll have photos of this stuff. We couldn't take photos ourselves because it's all proprietary and they're very protective of it, obviously. But they did do official press photos themselves that are being cleared. And so I'll eventually put this probably into an article and share some photos of it. But we got to see how the chips get, as the big wafer, the die get cut into the smaller little pieces, basically. And then and it's just crazy because they put water on it and they use this special mini saw that goes through it, but it heats up. So they have to be careful because the heat can warp the wafer and then the die itself. And then they use like a special plastic that holds the chips in place that, I don't know, it's just all crazy. They cut through the plastic that's holding the chips so the chips don't move, but they don't cut all the way through the plastic, only like halfway, so it's still sticky and holds the chip in place. But when we're talking about this plastic, like imagine saran wrap, okay, something like that, maybe a little thicker than saran wrap. Now imagine cutting halfway through that with a tool, right? like the actual thickness of the saran wrap. Just you're only cutting halfway through it. That's like what they're doing in the precision that they're working on. It's just like, how the hell are they doing that? And then we see the chips, and then each one of those go through other machines that then they test every single one, go through a software. They test the like electricity basically going through it and the gating and how it all works, and it's all mapped out, and they're checking the software and like how that will work on it and all the little components. And if something is wrong, it goes to another part of the factory where all they do is diagnose it, and they analyze the chip, and they have to go through all the layers, figure out what's wrong with it, because then they can use that information to feed back to the fab factory where they're making the wafers to make adjustments. And that's how that system works, because ultimately you can mass produce chips, but the real big question is what's called the yield. How many out of if you're manufacturing 100% wafers, out of that 100%, how many are usable? Because if you're only getting 50%, that's not good. But if you're getting like 80 or 90%, that's really good, because you don't need to remanufacture stuff. So it's all about improving that precision so that each batch that comes out is perfect. And so they test everything to the T. And then we saw how it goes through the system where it gets mounted onto what you would recognize as the actual chip itself, like the green PCB board and everything. And we saw how their new Foveros system works and how it places the chips together. They use a special glue, is actual glue that gets inserted and glues the chip to it. And it's just like one of the I was telling my best friend this about last night. Like, so one of the things that they where they test the chips electrically, it goes through these machines, and like one segment of this machine is like weighs 1 ton, and in that section they'll have like, I think it's like 4 blocks, and then each one of those blocks they can test like, I think it was like 12 or 15 chips at once. And this is all automated, meaning there's like a robot. It's a robot like machine on wheels that will go to where the bins are stored. It goes up to them, the bins get cycled, and it picks out the bin it needs and brings it out with its little arms, puts it in internally. It then auto drives to one of the sections in the factory where they're doing this testing. It goes down the aisle, then it inserts it into the machine, backs up, and then goes and repeats the process over and over. The only thing that humans do in Intel's labs are to fix things and to monitor things. No one's actually placing in chips and stuff like that and doing anything. It's all done by machine, and it's all like robots running around the place. So they have these big sections where they do these testing, but they need to update the hardware every once in a while, especially if there's a new chip coming out. So each one of these things weighs a ton. And they have like, I don't know, a couple hundred of them in this factory. So they had to like specially build the floor to hold all the weights. But the question is, how do you move that 1 ton thing out to add in the new machines and work on them if something goes wrong? And so they had this thing. It's like, we were all blown away by this part, which was they have like a machine that comes over and it lifts it out and allows you to slide it down and roll it down the hallway. But it doesn't roll it. It uses basically a hovercraft system. If you can think of air hockey and how the little air blows out the bottom and then you have the chip and it floats, it's that, but reversed. It's upside down. So the jets come out from the bottom of this thing and hits the floor, and the floor is covered in like a plastic so that if there's no air being wasted, basically. And the thing is like, I don't know, like a couple millimeters off of the floor. Like, so I don't even think you can like put your finger under it. But like, it wasn't making any really noise. It wasn't louder than the factory we were in. Like, we couldn't hear like a jet blowing, and it's not tethered. There's no wires or cables. So we're all like, how the hell is this thing working? And 2 people, they let us do it. 2 people could just grab this thing by the rails, and you just slide it, and the thing would just glide on the floor. And we're like, what the hell is going on? So they have like all this weird technology to make all this stuff happen. And then we saw the chips and how they get finalized and what's called packaging. The first time I heard packaging, I'm like, you mean like when they wrap it up in a box? And it's like, no. The packaging is when they place it on the PCB board and glue it together and assemble it all so that it's the actual chip and then can be sent out. So it was, I'm glossing over a lot of stuff, obviously, but I'll go into more detail when we get some more photos and I can write this stuff up. But what was also interesting, those machines, those computers that are testing all the chips as they come through are themselves proprietary designs that Intel doesn't want leaked. So instead of having another company manufacture those and bring them internally, they just have another part of the factory, and that's all they do is make the boards and the computers to test the chips for the computers. It was like so meta. It was just like, oh my God. So there's all these people in another part of the lab, and all they're doing is putting together these boards. Like one PCB board, tester was 30 PCB boards thick. So this thing was like inches. So the green board on your motherboard. Imagine 30 layers of that. There's so much wiring that goes on with all this stuff. It was just kind of mind blowing. And so then they make them at that factory and they use them in that factory, but they also send them to the other Intel factories who need them as well. So they do everything internally. And this is something like AMD does nothing of, right? AMD just like designs the chips and then gives them to TSMC, and TSMC is like, okay, yeah, we can make that. Here's what it'll cost you. But Intel does everything internally. And like one of the parts, like when the wafers first come in, this was also in the Israel fab, is the lights, overhead lights are all yellow. And that's because of the UV and like white lights can destroy and degrade the wafer itself. So the lights have to be yellow. And that sounds like nothing, but when you walk into what's a bright white room with yellow lighting, it really messes with your eyes for the first couple of minutes. Like you're seeing spots everywhere, and it's just like it's really strange. But yeah, everything. And so we had to wear the full bunny suits that you see often when you see tours. Like, so we had to wear face masks and gloves and multiple layers around our feet. And when you go into different rooms, there's a sticky pad on the floor. So it pulls off anything from your feet as you go through. Because it wasn't as a clean room as the fabs. The fabs were a whole other level. They have ventilation that goes through the floor and the ceiling to pull all the dust out. And then the machines themselves are all self-sealed anyway, and everything that comes through is basically already into like a little like a box, a magazine, if you can think of it like that way, a magazine with different levels. So it's already multiple layers of protecting, making sure dust and everything's not in there. But we still had to wear all the protective equipment. We got to handle some of the chips and stuff like that, which was kind of cool, and see how it all works. But yeah, I mean, it's just like when you see how this stuff is done, you're like just thinking like, how did humans come up and think about doing all this stuff? Like it's just, I don't know. It was really, really impressive technology, and it just goes to show you where Intel just operates. And now what Intel is doing, and this is part of um, their new strategy going forward, ever since the new CEO came on board, is they're going to be using their ability to make processors. They're going to open it up to third parties, meaning that they could make chips for Samsung, make chips for Qualcomm. And I think there's already deals in place to do that, because right now only TSMC is the major manufacturer of processors, and they're based in Hong Kong. And then you got the Hong Kong China thing. So basically, if China invades Hong Kong, they could take over TSMC, and then they control all of a sudden the world's chips, right? Because then there aren't many fabs in the world. They're super expensive. The one fab in Israel costs $10 billion to manufacture. That's not to run it. That's just to make the thing. And they're building a second one right now. So you're talking about $10 billion in capital, which is always why I laugh when people say Microsoft just make a processor. It's like, you don't know, man, what goes into this stuff. So what's happening though, Intel's building these fabs. They have them in other countries. Like they're building one in Poland. They got something in Germany. They have some in the U.S. now with Arizona. Oregon is coming online too. They're doing one there. And the idea is Intel is going to be bringing this stuff kind of home, so that if were anything to happen to TSMC or China and all that kind of stuff, the United States can still continue to manufacture silicon and processors, which is so critical to our ecosystem and economy. But they can also now manufacture chips for other companies too. So basically, they're going to rent out their equipment where they have excess capacity to spare. They can rent it out to other companies and then bring in more money, that's TSMC's whole model, is just making stuff for other people. They don't really do anything for themselves, as far as I know. But that's where Intel is going. And so we got to see the new chips that are coming out, and it's not a secret of, you can already read about some of the new chips. Some of the information's already come out by Intel themselves. We just got a deeper dive into how the actual architectures on this new stuff works, and it's like really fascinating. But yeah, I mean, that's why Intel is Intel, and yeah, they're struggling a little bit right now, but man, I'm telling you, long term, bet on them. Their roadmap is, I think, really, really good, and they're actually hitting their goals. Like, we haven't seen major delays on any of this stuff yet, but They're the ones that have this much capacity and technology all under one company. Whereas even Apple only designs its chips; it doesn't make them. And that's a big advantage that Intel's going to have long term. It's just, how these chips, work into different types of products in the coming years will be interesting.
Yeah. Intel should start making its own laptops. Why doesn't Intel make PCs like fully?
Well, they do in the sense of those are the reference designs. So I did
Yeah,
see
but
basically
yeah.
what are Intel laptops there.
Right.
They're, but yeah, you're right. They don't sell them. I think because that's a completely different market, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't, now you need to open factories to manufacture your
Yeah.
laptops
Right.
or rent them from China, right? Um, and then you need distribution channels, and then you need support channels, and like all that is super expensive and capital intensive, which is why it's surprising even Microsoft does it. But it also shows why Microsoft has struggled to like go more global with its products because you can't just launch a product. You got to manufacture it. Then you also have to replacement parts. You have to have then support channels for it. You also have to usually have retail options too and deals in countries to sell your product and the whole system's there. You also need localized support for all that, right? If you're going to sell in Bangladesh, you got to have Bangladesh representation. You can't be just English. So it really becomes capital intensive. And Intel, I don't think, sees the benefit in competing against their partners who are buying their processors. I think they'd rather go build the ideal laptop based on their processor, which is what they do. And then they turn around to OEMs and be like, listen, this system here. It will give you the best performance. It'll give you the best cooling. It has the best. This is the ideal. Like this is what Intel Evo is really about: is setting those
Yeah.
standards on what a laptop should be, meeting those things. And then companies are free to basically copy that and like spin it and make their own version, which is why you see this sometimes what seems like a concerted effort, like when Ultrabooks came out. Like Ultrabook with a capital U is an Intel name. And they worked with OEMs to basically co-launch all these devices at once as an Ultrabook range. That's an Intel driven thing, an initiative. And that's how this stuff works. So you'll continue to see that. They're doing even more of it. I'll have more to say about these reference designs because they're really like going down to different levels with this stuff now. But the idea here is if you're HP, you don't need to build a new laptop from scratch. They're already giving you the blueprints basically and be like, just base it off of this and use these hints and tips. Not only that, if they are building a laptop, they can work with Intel directly and be like, hey, we're having an issue here with
Yeah.
the thermals, or we're not as getting much power as we wanted, or the battery life. And Intel will work with them, being like, here's what you need to do, or do this and that. And again, something that AMD really has the capability yet to do. They're doing it a little bit more. They're trying to get there because that's the whole package that Intel sells to companies. That's why they're so dominant in the PC space.
Yeah, that's kind of what Microsoft did with Intel with the Surface Neo. Neo was a partnership project between Intel and
Yes.
Microsoft, and yeah, I think Intel was the only company pushing that whole dual screen initiative at the time, and they were obviously
Yeah.
going to be helping Dell and HP and Lenovo with theirs as well. But sadly, only Lenovo ended up shipping. I think HP and Dell cancelled theirs when 10X went away. Whereas Lenovo was like, "Excuse me, we've worked enough on this. We're shipping these."
Yeah, yeah. I've been trying to get work with Intel a little bit more on that side of stuff to see how that is done because I find it really fascinating how they
Yeah,
basically do build their own laptops and PCs, the mini PCs, the NUCs, like the nukes, right? That's Intel. Like they
yeah,
built all those things, and it's self-serving, right? They do it because they know how their chips work and the ideal like environments for them to maximize their potential, but it's self-serving in the sense that if you can get HP, then go, okay, hey, or Lenovo, we're going to try that dual screen thing. Like it helps because it pushes the industry forward. And then ideally, more companies will make stuff like that, and then they'll license it from Intel. It's one reason why, like when I ask Qualcomm, are you going to do dual screen or foldables? They're like, because like I'm talking in the PC space because they know Intel right now is kind of dominating that with reference designs, and they haven't done that. So it's a whole other thing. But it was really fascinating to see, and just yeah, that high level knowledge that is just way over my head. When they went into the section on AI, it was just like, what? like,
yeah.
again, it blows my mind that that people know this stuff and that's all they work on, and they can explain it, but they can't necessarily explain it on a simple level. But it was still really cool stuff. So, but I'll have more on that hopefully in the coming weeks, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Intel's next gen chips and why I'm excited about them. And I think they're going to be a really, really big deal for the PC space. I think, again, I keep saying this, and I feel even more confident now after this tour for other reasons that what we see coming from Intel and Qualcomm, like I said, there'll be some of the stuff will be announced soon. We have the Snapdragon Summit coming up, no secret there in end of October. So we're going to start to hear about this stuff. I still don't think it ships till early next year, maybe mid next year. But I'm telling you, 2024 in the PC space with Qualcomm and Intel is going to be really, really interesting. Like, I think they're both going to compete very well against each other. Intel is trying to get the efficiency thing down. Qualcomm's trying to get the power thing down while maintaining efficiency. And I think they're going to arrive at similar levels in terms of what they offer, which is going to be like a really interesting thing because who wins here is going to be, of course, the consumers. Plus, we're all going to get access now to NPUs, which, as we talked about earlier, opens up the gates to new specific software developed for this hardware that's really going to take us to the next level for the AI journey that we're on. So I'm telling you, next year is going to be big for PC. If you've always been worried about, Apple and the M chips and all that, I'm telling you what's coming next. From what I've heard and what I've seen from both companies, it's going to be there. It's going to be either really close or it's going to beat out Apple. Now, of course, Apple is always moving. They're going to have an M3 chip, so who knows? But it's getting there, folks. It's really, really getting there. So it's all cool stuff. Finally, I guess let's wrap up with the Lenovo IFA hands-on. So you were actually able to go there at least briefly to see what Lenovo was offering, and they had a few big announcements today. Do you want to go over those quickly? Do you want to give a summary?
Yeah. So basically, I think Lenovo announced 4 sort of main products today. They announced a new Legion 9, I think it was. It's a new gaming laptop. Kind of awesome. Didn't really spend much time with that though because it's another gaming laptop. What was more interesting was the other 3 things they announced. They announced a new 27-inch 4K display called the ThinkVision. What was the actual edition? Let's have a look here. ThinkVision 27 3D creative monitor, and 3D is in the name because yes, it has a 3D display. Now, this isn't like your old school Samsung 3D TV kind of technology. You don't need to wear a pair of glasses, and ideally, it shouldn't give you a headache after prolonged use. How they're doing it is it's a combination of using an eye tracking technology with a display that can splice a different image between certain lines of pixels. So what that does is it gives you the impression of 3D on an object that's designed for this display. So it doesn't work with everything. It doesn't work just natively in Windows. But using Lenovo's own software, and developers can also tap into this, using the eye tracking and the pixel method, as I just mentioned, when you look at an item on the screen, it looks like it's popping out in front of you. And it really does. In the demos, they gave us free reign. They did a demo, but I was able to play with it myself and the software. It looks like it's sitting in front of the display. You can move your head and, it tracks as you would expect, thanks to that eye tracking, which is positioning the object based on how you're looking at it. And it's high quality as well. It's a 4K panel. The actual projection is 1080p, but you stand far enough back. I think you're maybe, half a meter maybe from the display. It looks great. It looks absolutely fantastic. And there's a nice sweet spot about, half a meter from the display where it looks the best. I think you get too close, the effect stops working because it can't track your eyes anymore. If you step too far back, same reason. But yeah, it's great. Now, it is not cheap. These are going to be sold for, I think, $3,000. Yes, $3,000. And it will go on sale in January 2024. Now, this is really for 3D artists, 3D model makers, professionals. Yeah, this isn't for you or me, who would rarely use this because, like I said, it only works in specific software that's designed for it. But if you are somebody who works with 3D objects or schematics and stuff like that, if you're somebody who actually utilizes a HoloLens or think of an Apple Vision Pro could help you in your workflow, this monitor could actually step in and maybe do that for you. Obviously, you do miss out on the AR aspect of things, but it really reminded me of HoloLens. Obviously, me and Dan had tried HoloLens. You know, they do that demo where you stick it on and there's an object right in front of you and you're able to look around it and stuff. I had that exact same experience and feeling with this monitor where, oh yeah, the object is here. The only thing the monitor doesn't do is allow you to manipulate the image with your hands. You still have to use a keyboard and mouse because they haven't got any hand tracking built into the monitor. Maybe that's something they can do for the next gen. But yeah, it really did remind me of the holograms you see on a HoloLens. And so it's really cool that Lenovo's built this. Again, it's only for creative professionals, really. It's very expensive. But it's cool that this technology is being experimented with in products. Then they announced the Think Vision. Was it Think Vision? Think Glasses. Which is, I think, a second gen, right? I think they've really had a product like this out before.
So there's Think Glasses T1.
Right.
That was announced at CES. I'm not sure those ever actually shipped. And now these are called
Legion glasses.
Legion glasses.
Yes.
Yeah. And as far as I can tell, they're the exact same thing. They have the same specs, which are full HD for each eye, micro OLED at 60 hertz. And then they have little speakers in them, and they connect via Type-C. So I think I'm not sure if they ever, like I said, released the T1 glasses. I could just look it up, I guess. But I think these are just the same. They just repurposed them for gaming and calling them Legion. And these are sort of like the Unreal Air glasses, which are already out. And they're a little bit more expensive at $379. I actually have those. I've been meaning to write them up. So what makes these things cool, though, is when I showed the T1 glasses, I loved them. I wrote a really good article about it. Well, I think it was a really good article because they have a single purpose, which is you plug them in and it gives you a very large virtual display in front of your eyes. And you can wear them just like sunglasses or eyeglasses so you can see your room around you, but you still see this big floating display. Or you can even clip on like a blackout thing so you get like truly immersive experience with it. And it's good quality. Like it's pretty sharp. I did have to get lenses adjusted for mine. That's what took a while with the Unreals, because you can get like HoloLens. They have little dummy glasses that you can take to your optometrist and they make custom prescription lenses. So when you put it in, you can see in focus. But you put them on and then you just plug it into, it's Type-C, so it works with everything, even an iPhone. You'll need the adapter,
anything
but
with video
it works with an iPhone. Yes. So you can plug it into a Windows PC. And it just recognizes it as a second display. And then you can go into your display settings, and then you can turn off your laptop display and then only see this. It gives you ultimate privacy. Or you can plug it in, what I've been using, the ROG Ally or the Legion Go, and you plug it in there, and now you can video game what feels like, I believe it's like a 120-inch TV in front of you. That's what it kind of like simulates almost. And it's private. No one can see what you're doing, so you can be on an airplane and be doing this as well and gaming and all that kind of stuff. It's $329, which isn't cheap, but it's also cheaper than Unreal Airs, at least their retail price was. So it's definitely comparable. But you don't need it with the Legion Go, but it will definitely kind of enhance the Legion Go's experience. But what I like about this is not only the price is, $300 is much more affordable than $3,500.
Yeah.
But it's a specific focus. Whereas like people look at the Vision Pro and everybody's like, oh, it's cool. It's in with HoloLens. It's cool. It's neat. It's got hologram stuff. But it's like, all right, but what's the killer app? What are you going to use this thing for? It's like, well, you're going to take phone calls on it. Okay. I mean, sure. But like every time your phone rings, you're going to run into your room and slap a helmet on your head. Like, that seems kind of dumb. And then if you're doing professional 3D work, you just talked about 3D monitors, and this technology, Asus has been working on it too. They have it coming out in their laptops. You're going to see much more of it. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, as this technology, it's expensive right now, but as more and more devices come out with it and it gets more and more mass produced, you're going to see the price of it come down further, and you'll see it in more affordable devices. But again, if you're working in 3D and graphics and you want that experience, would the Vision Pro maybe be a better experience? Yeah, possibly. It's also $3,500, and it has a limited battery life and all that kind of stuff in there. If you're working in an office, it can be very expensive. But this monitor at $3,000, not cheap still, but it's a lot more pragmatic, because I guarantee if you're working 8 hours in front of something, you're going to want to work 8 hours in front of a monitor that's 3D than wearing a headset on your head that weighs 1.5 pounds for 8 hours. And I think that's where Apple Apple's bet may be a bad one for multiple reasons, but I don't think they necessarily anticipated this concept of 3D displays getting as good as what you're describing, because Richard Devine saw the Asus Predator, I believe it is, that has this too, and he said the same thing. Like, this thing is incredible. It's one company, by the way, that's making this technology, and they just bought up another company that makes like versions on tablets, so they're going to be able to control everything from large displays down to tablets. So you'll be seeing this in like more products, but I think this is going to eat into what Apple's vision was, because this is just way more practical for people working in an office than putting a headset on your head. And I think it's going to deliver you like 80 or 90% of the experience. You're right, you can't reach out and touch stuff. Although I don't see why that's not a solvable
No,
problem.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I said I did ask them, and they were like, "Yeah, this is stuff we could do because obviously it's doing the eye tracking already using 3D
Yep.
cameras and IR cameras. That's how HoloLens does it. That's how they track hands. So it could
Yep.
be
It
applied
puts some
to
more
hands as well.
sensors in that bezel
Yeah,
that detects
absolutely.
hands.
Hmm.
Like, there's no reason why that stuff can't happen. Now, think about how much cooler that would be, right? You
Yeah.
just walk into your
Oh
room and
man.
your computer's on and you just start using it. It's 3D. You can start manipulating stuff in the air. And you don't have to wear a stupid headset like that weighs a pound and a half.
Yeah.
Granted, a headset will get lighter, but it's still like, even like where we're just talking about the Legion Go glasses and the Unreal glasses, like, I like them, but I still don't use them as much as I would like to, because it's still putting something on my face, and it's just not the same as just picking up my ally and just starting to game. But the ability just to get into your work, go to the bath. Like, imagine if you're working in front of this thing like for hours and you just gotta go to the bathroom, or you gotta take a call, like your phone rings. Like there's just a bunch of instances where you got to take the stupid thing off and like then get back to work, and it's just not comfortable. But having a 3D display, I think people are really, really missing the boat on this, how important this stuff is going to be for at least professional use. Maybe down to the consumer level in gaming. Asus has shown it off for gaming because you can do it there as well, and it's actually really impressive there too. So maybe you'll start to see it happen there. But yeah, this is kind of next level stuff. Well, as you mentioned, this isn't like the 3D TVs we had years ago. This is brand new technology that takes it to a whole new level.
Yeah. So lastly, the thing I got hands on time with was the Lenovo Legion Go, as Dan mentioned briefly there. The Legion Go has been heavily rumored, no thanks to our own Jez Corden, who leaked the existence of the device, to my knowledge. Yes, this is basically a Steam Deck competitor from Lenovo, but it's designed to be like the best one. Like, they've taken a look at the
Yeah.
market, they've seen the Steam Deck, they've seen the Asus ROG Ally, which up until now I think was considered the best, and they were like, we can do better. Let's just make it bigger and better, and that's what they've done. It is a bigger ROG Ally. The system on chip inside is the same as what's in the ROG Ally, so it's the most up to date AMD processor, which is really great in these handheld gaming devices. But it has an 8-inch 1080p display, which is very good. It's very nice. Pixels per inch is really good on it, so you can't see pixels unless you're like really looking up close. It is quite a bit heavier than those other two handhelds, but that's because it is bigger and it has a lot bigger battery, to my knowledge. And there's a lot more to it, because not only is it just bigger, they've got a built-in kickstand, and the reason it's got a kickstand is because they've designed it so that the left and right controllers come off. Very similar to the Nintendo Switch's Joy-Cons. So you can detach the left and right controllers and remotely play your game via Bluetooth, which is awesome. So what it means is that you can kick it back using the kickstand on a plane, for example, detach the controllers and sit in your airplane seat and play the game without having to lean onto your desk, whatever, as you're using it with the full screen and stuff. Not only that, it has a thing called FPS mode, which allows you to use the right controller as like a joystick almost. It has a little accessory it comes with, which magnetically attaches to the bottom, and then you can move it around on a desk as if it was like a joystick, as I said. That's really cool. They call it FPS mode because it's supposed to make it easier aiming like a gun in a first-person shooter, which is kind of cool. Sadly, I didn't really get to test that. I only had 30 minutes with it, and they'd only preloaded 4 kind of crappy games, other than Power Wash Simulator, which is a great game. So we wasn't really able to really push the bird out and try some graphical intensive stuff and whatnot. But like I said, it's the same specs more or less as an Asus ROG Ally, so you can look up benchmarks for that device. They will be quite similar to this. Maybe this has slightly better cooling and stuff. It's a bit thicker because it has a fan in there and stuff. But all the buttons are very nice and clicky. It's got RGB under the analog sticks, as you would expect from a gaming device. And overall, I was very, very impressed with it. Impressed with the hands-on time and the hardware itself. I asked Lenovo a few questions like, can this device do like multiplayer games, like the Nintendo Switch can, using the different joysticks. They said no. It has a gyro in each, so. But I don't think it's enabled in software. The guy I was talking to said, yeah, they put it into the hardware, but as of currently, there's nothing that utilizes it, and they don't know if that will change in the future. But it's cool to see regardless. And the other thing, of course, is Windows, talking about Windows on the device versus the Steam Deck, which has an optimized OS. Windows 11 currently very much is not optimized for these sort of handheld devices. It's a discussion we've had before. Lenovo's fully aware. But sadly, they had no info to share. I did try to sort of see if something was in the pipeline for that, but they were not willing to budge on comment there. So, yeah, overall, very, very impressed with Legion Go. It's $700. It launches next month, and I think if you're a fan of these handheld gaming devices, this is the best one. There's no doubting it. If you want the biggest and the best, you go with this one. And yeah, I think that's awesome.
It's a really interesting device. I give them credit for doing something different, right? That was going to be the issue here, because we could just see a bunch of very similar devices, but Lenovo was like, no, we're going to do something different. 8.8-inch display. It's nearly 2 inches larger than everyone else, so that changes things. That's a much more immersive experience. It's way bigger than Razer's experience, that's for sure. And then you have, of course, the detachable joysticks, as you mentioned, that for FPS mode, which is really different. I don't know if it's going to work out well, but at least it's kind of cool that they're offering something different there. You got the kickstand built in, so it acts like a tablet. Yeah. Just a lot of unique stuff here that I think they're offering. Of course, the glasses we just mentioned, you don't need to buy the glasses with them. And of course, they'll work with the ROG Ally or even the Steam Deck. They work with Steam Deck, I should mention. But Steam Deck being Linux, once in a while you run into some driver issues. I've had the glasses just turn off sometimes in the middle of gaming, which has been weird. No problem with Windows, though. So I'm glad they're coming out with something that offers something different here, right? Because the ROG Ally is really, really good. It's expensive. Yeah, we all know that, but it's a really, really good device. It's a step up from Steam Deck. And this is like kind of a step up from the ROG Ally, or at least in different ways. Like, I don't know if the separating joysticks is necessarily my thing, but yet I could see using it, because the problem is you're holding a whole device for a while. Now, the ROG Ally is lighter than Steam Deck, and it makes a big difference. I presume this device will be heavier.
Yes.
Because it's an 8-inch display and has a 49 watt-hour battery, which is bigger than I believe the 40 watt-hours the other ones have. I got to check that. But so because of that, it's going to be heavier, meaning so if you're gaming for hours, yeah, you're going to get some wrist fatigue, right? So now you just plop the display down, open the kickstand, and hold the controllers in your hand and just game that way. That's interesting. Like, if I was on an airplane, like, that's a kind of a cooler way to game than me just holding the whole thing for a while. Like, I have to admit, that's different. And they're going with the AMD processor here, which should be really good. Again, I'd be curious. Intel's not there yet in this space, but I'd be really curious to see if that lasts long, because I think what Intel has coming could compete with AMD. But the AMD chips have been serving well here. Display looks nice. I don't know. I think it's a really cool thing that they're doing here, and there's still room here for other companies to come in and make something even better or even more affordable, right? There's something in that $499 mark that remains to be seen that a company can do. They can bring down the specs a little bit, maybe make a smaller version. A lot of options here.
If I were Microsoft, I'd really be looking into this form factor from the perspective of Xbox.
Yeah.
Because this would be a really good opportunity for Xbox to build a gaming PC, air quotes. We call it PC, obviously it's handheld.
Sure.
It could be in a collaboration with Windows, who could finally get off their butts and build a game mode for Windows. If they could do that and have it so that these PCs can boot automatically into that UX, an Xbox branded handheld like this would be awesome, powered by Windows, being able to play not only Xbox games from the Microsoft Store or cloud games via streaming, whatnot, but Steam games as well. Like, it would be insane. Like, and
it's designed by the Surface team and has Alcantara on it.
Oh, yeah, that's the Surface one. I think it would make more sense for it to be branded Xbox. I think this could be Xbox's
it
first
would be.
PC.
No, but it would be the Surface team technically designing it.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. Green Alcantara, I'm in.
Yes. It's so cool. Yeah, but I mean, they definitely could do something like that, right? A lot of between cloud gaming and the fact that processors and displays have gotten to the point where we can now realize the vision we've all been trying to get to for years with these handhelds, which is a handheld pocket PC that can actually game similar to a desktop, Yeah.
And
granted, we're talking full HD displays, or this one's slightly higher than full HD. but like 60 frames per second, like, yeah, that's all you really need at this level. But to be able to play these, top tier games on handhelds like this, and again, with the battery life, still not amazing. That will improve. I think the next gen stuff, is definitely going to go down that route. Intel has Lunar Lake coming out in a couple of years. That's their next gen chipset. That's even more efficiency based. Uh, like, and I've said this before, like the ROG Ally, I use it mobily, but only in a sense of opposed to a desktop, not actually out in the world. I'm not really sitting in a park bench gaming. I use it so I can play it on the couch or on an airplane. Uh, and so the battery life isn't as big of a deal to me. The bigger deal is I'm taking a portable PC with PC gaming that can fit in a bag. That's the big thing. The battery life, yeah, I wish it was better. That'd be awesome, but it's not the deal killer for me. The thing is, it's the killer piece of this is it's a portable gaming system, a portable PC. So,
Yeah.
but we got to see how they sell.
Yeah. There must be some stake in this market because obviously OEMs are interested. You don't see this normally from OEMs if it's a dead idea. Yeah.
And between Game Boy for years, and then the Switch now, and then you had PSP for a long time, which was that was a cool device. Remember, it had little freaking CDs
yeah.
that would spin around, physical media. This concept has been around for a long. The Neo Geo, like we've always wanted these kind of things, but they've always been compromised in terms of for the PC crowd. It was always like, yeah, but I can't play like like Baldur's Gate 3 on it, which would be challenging, of course, but or Starfield, which just launched, and you should go read our review of it. You can play Starfield on these things, like that's crazy. We've never had that. Now we have that, so hopefully the gaming community, which historically hasn't been price adverse to adopting new technology, will jump into it.
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait and see. So.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that does it for the podcast. We did go longer, but there was a lot there to talk about and catch up on. So hopefully you guys definitely enjoyed it. We will be doing Q&A now with the audience. So if they do have questions, they can start firing them off into the chat. Of course, we do record this live every Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel. You can join in the video there, watch and join in with the chat. You can also watch a previous episode. You can reach me on Twitter. I refuse to call it the other name. It's Twitter at Daniel_Rubino, Rubino. It's also the same address on Threads. And I think the same address on Blue Sky and same address on Mastodon, but who knows? And you can follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN on Twitter as well. And he's also on Threads. We should mention Threads now has a web app, which means you can make it a PWA, and it works really well as a progressive web app. In fact, we have a guide on that and when essential if you're curious about doing it. So it's slowly catching up to Twitter. It will always be Twitter. Never going to call it by its other name. But there we go. As always, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Wonderful. So, yes, if you have any questions, now's the time to throw them into the chat. We'll hang around for a few minutes and do our best to answer them. And then I'm going for dinner because I'm hungry and it's 8 p.m. It's funny. So when flying into Berlin yesterday, the night before, I hadn't slept very well. I had to get up at 3 a.m. to get the 6 a.m. flight because I'm an hour away from the airport, or more than an hour away from the airport. So I got in bed by like maybe 11, and I just had trouble sleeping. I must have maybe got half an hour at most, maybe an hour if I'm lucky. So that whole day was basically sleep deprived. I was fine in the morning because I'm pretty good at operating on little sleep normally. I was fine in the morning, luckily, so I did the Lenovo briefing stuff and I was able to get through that just fine. But then after lunchtime, I was like, this is starting to hit me. I'm in Berlin, I'm alone, and I'm very tired. I've got nowhere to put my head down. I've got like 6 hours until my flight. Wasn't great. So I just kept myself up and walking around. I went looking at stuff and whatnot just to stay awake. Then finally got on a train back to the airport, and I had a 30-minute nap on the plane. It's quite amazing how a nap, even just 30 minutes, can change your energy levels when you're that tired. Usually a nap is a nap, it's not whatever. But when you're that tired and you have 30 minutes, it energized me. I woke up feeling like a new guy. I was like, this is amazing. I'm awake again. And it got me through to the end of the day. But I haven't been that sleep deprived in a long time. Usually I have at least 4 hours a night, which isn't a lot. You're supposed to have like at least 6 or 8. I don't normally get that.
Yeah, I didn't mention about my travel experience, but I'll
Yeah,
share
you
that
had
next week.
yours. Yeah, that was
It's
wild. What you did?
37 hours from
That's
hotel
ridiculous.
to my front door. It wasn't that, to be honest, it wasn't terrible.
That's
Like I
it.
wanted to get home and
Sounds
stuff like that,
terrible.
but it was like I think I'm just getting used to long haul trips, you know.
Yeah.
And what's funny is now it's all relative, right? It's like, well, 37 hours, but it's like now if I have to fly to the UK, my God, that's like nothing.
Oh yeah, no,
It's
totally.
nothing at
Like
all.
when I flew into New York for the Surface event in 2019, I was taken aback by the 6 hour flight being so short versus the I think 9 or 10 hour flight is to Seattle. Because usually I know it's a long flight because I'll be on the plane and I'll be like, you look at the watch and it's been 6 hours and you're thinking to yourself, this should be done now. We should be there. Why are we not there? We've still got 3 hours. It's two movies worth of time left.
Yeah, I
Right.
watched a bunch of movies.
Yeah, but why is AI becoming a major thing nowadays for major events like IFA, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and CES 2024? Well, because the technology is finally at a point where it can start shipping in products. Obviously, AI has been something people have been experimenting with for years, but with the introduction of OpenAI and ChatGPT, it suddenly became viable to shove into a bunch of places. Same with generative AI in regards to image creation and music. I'm being called apparently. It's suddenly just it's suddenly viable, and so that's what we're starting to see. We're starting now that it's viable. There's applications for it where it makes sense, and so hardware makers and software makers are starting to build it into their products.
Why is AI becoming a major thing nowadays for major events like IFA, Apple, Microsoft, Google, CES
I just
2024?
answered that one.
Why? Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I think it's obvious. We've had
Will
breakthroughs.
yeah. Will show handwriting be part of the Windows 11 23H2 update? I'm not, to my knowledge, I don't think it'll be there day one. I think that's coming a bit later. But it will definitely ship on 23 as it will ship on top of 23H2. To my knowledge, it's not being saved for VNext. Have you heard any news on Core PC? I've heard stuff. Can't talk about it yet. I know it's still in development and being worked on, and there are additions of Windows Microsoft are building on top of it that will ship either at the end of 2024 or at some point in 2025. But there's nothing I can really talk about as of today. But it is still. It's not been cancelled. If that's what you're wondering. I'm dyslexic and AI has helped me tidy up my text so I get my words out well, and Bing Chat has been a great tool for finding information. Yeah, there's lots of useful and great use cases for this generative AI. And like the best one for me is its ability to combine multiple different search criteria into one thing. You can ask it a whole bunch of different criteria in a sentence and it can answer them all. Whereas, traditional search results can't do that. You have to do questions one at a time. You can't be like, hey, Google, what's the value of this when you do it with this and then over there, buy this and put it part of that over there. Like it doesn't, you can't do a Google search of that. Whereas Bing Chat, you can have a question of that caliber and it will do all the relevant searches to give you an answer based on every single criteria you provided it. Now, it's not perfect, but it's better. It's a step above whatever Google could give you back. You're not using AI. I recall somebody mentioning that there might be some movement within Microsoft to improve Windows experience on handhelds because of Rowan Sones, I'm probably butchering that name, Rowan Sons, who is now the head of Xbox devices. Maybe, I don't know. What I do know is this was actually something Microsoft explored last year as part of a hackathon project. We've talked about this before. A lot of Microsoft products actually start as hackathon things and they grow into things that end up shipping. Sadly, I think the people who were working on that hackathon project said that it never got off the ground and there was no executive that was interested in taking this further. That could have been them lying. Who knows? But they definitely built out working concepts for it on Windows. They've already done that. They've explored it. Whether or not it ships now is another story. I think when they did the hackathon stuff last year, that this market of gaming handhelds was still very niche, and it didn't show much sign of being a thing, like a surefire thing. I think this year, like it would basically been a year later now. I think this year's hackathon's happening now, or if it hasn't already happened yet, or about to. That the market has changed, and it's very clear now that this is certainly an up-and-coming area that OEMs are interested in investing in. And so maybe Microsoft will reconsider their stance on that hackathon project from last year, bring it back to life, build it out for Windows 12. Who knows? Debating buying the Surface Laptop Studio 2 or waiting for one more gen. Main issue is battery life. Ideal all day doing basic productivity tasks. Is 13th gen good enough? And how much better is 14th gen expected to be? This is certainly a Dan question, but to my knowledge, the Laptop Studio 2's battery cell will be the same. I don't know if it will be much bigger. I don't think it can be much bigger. But 13th gen is more efficient, right, than 11th gen.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I would say so. I've been actually surprised with the 13th gen. I'm getting better battery life than definitely on 12. I don't know how it directly compare to the 11th gen, where there's a lot of moving parts there, including the GPU. I think it'll be good, though. In terms of waiting for the next gen after that, listen, I just told you, Intel's focusing on efficiency now. So the more all the next gen stuff coming out, it's going to be doubling down kind of on battery life. So they're going to be better than that. Should you wait for it? I don't know. It's I think though the laptop studio, I think it'll still have really good battery life. Because the Studio One had really good battery life, surprisingly for what it is. So I wouldn't be surprised if we still get that.
Have you heard any news on the Surface Duo or Microsoft launcher? No. N-O. All right, last call for questions. Then it is time to head off. Well, with more affordable Windows-based handhelds releasing now, there is interest, and Microsoft can move to ship an optimized profile in the OS for those handhelds. Yeah, I think that the only way it's going to happen is if this market takes off and is big enough for Microsoft to warrant the resources to build out that support on top of Windows. I think it's certainly possible with Lenovo being other than Valve, Lenovo being the first big name to adopt this form factor is a good sign for sure. But we will need to see it from more. Like Razer, I think will need to build one. To be honest, Razer needs to build one. I think maybe. Dell is a gaming brand. What's Dell's gaming brand? Alienware. Alienware will probably need to come out of one.
I mean, they were the first ones to technically show one off. It was back in
exactly
2019 or 2020. They showed off an Alienware handheld that was Intel based.
And if Dell's doing it, it's a serious thing because Dell is usually the last to hold out on any experimental stuff. They still barely.
Yeah, and they still. I mean, technically they still are, right? Because now Lenovo's come out with one, Asus has come out with one, so Dell's still waiting there.
Would Core PC make more sense on handhelds, or using legacy Windows might be safer option for now? It would depend on the configuration of the Core PC, but I think Core PC would make more sense on these handhelds because they're easy to recover and all this other stuff, faster updates. But there's obviously the issue of the compatibility layer, which would you be able to play games on a Core PC edition? To my knowledge, yes. I don't think there'll be a performance hit there, but obviously I haven't been able to try it myself, so I don't know for sure. But on paper, I think Core PC does technically make more sense for these sort of handhelds, but we'll have to wait and see about that, of course. Zach, since the SLS2 won't start with an i5, do you think the starting price will increase to $19.99? I think it'll be higher, yes. I don't think we'll see the $15.99 starting price we saw the Studio One, because the Studio One's base configuration was Core i5, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage, and integrated graphics. To my knowledge, the base configuration for the Laptop Studio 2 is i7, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 storage, and a dedicated GPU. So not only are you getting an upgrade from an i5 to an i7, you also upgraded from integrated to a 40 series processor, graphics card, which will almost certainly bump the price at least $250, maybe more. I think maybe we'll see a starting price of $1,800 if we're lucky. But that's something to keep in mind. If you're somebody just looking for the entry level sort of $1,500 laptop studio, buy the laptop studio one now, because obviously once that's gone, it's gone, and you're not going to get an i5 laptop studio 2. Let's see here. Let's see a couple more questions. What TV shows are you interested in right now? I'm still watching After Party on Apple TV Plus, which is still airing. I think the finale is in the next couple of weeks. I think it's great. It's a show where you have to figure out who the murderer is, more or less. Any news on Windows Copilot? Nothing that we haven't already discussed on the podcast. So if you want to listen to our discussion there, scroll back. Are you invited to the Microsoft event? Yes, we are. In fact, I was invited for the first time ever as like an actual invite to me. Normally, I'm invited to the conferences, but they don't invite me to the special events like the Surface events and stuff. If I'm ever at a Surface event, it's because I'm going as a +1 for Dan. But this time they actually invited me for the first time. And I was like, hey, Zach, here's an invite. I was like, yay, except I'm not around. I'm on holiday, so I won't be going to the event. But Dan will be there on the ground, and we'll be covering the event as it happens. Okay, with that, it's time to head off, I think. So thank you very much for tuning in. We will be back next Friday, won't we? There's no reason to not be back. We'll be back next Friday. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.